Tuning in. My name is Dan Kornhauser,
My name is Bobby Hunt.
and you are tuned in to the newest edition of Shoot the J. It's been a long off season. We've done a couple of shows during the NBA offseason covering the NBA draft, some of the NBA free agency moves, so on and so forth. So hopefully you guys are all caught up on that stuff, and hope you guys are ready for the NBA regular season, which begins Tuesday, the 18th, which is tomorrow. We got two games on slate. I think the Lakers and the Warriors are one of them. Celtics and
Sixers.
Sixers is the other one. And then a full slate of NBA games on Wednesday, which I will be doing playing my part in the NFL Pick'em show with Mike Goodpaster and Steve Risley. So tune in to that. That's always a good one every week. We do that at 8 o'clock on Wednesdays, Eastern Standard Time. But enough of that, all right? Because that show gets love. It's time to talk some ball, all right? It's time to talk NBA, Knicks, Lakers, Nets, everybody. We're going to make predictions. We're going to say some outlandish things. I hope you guys are ready. I'm ready. Bob, are you ready?
I'm more than ready, and I can't believe the NBA season's already here. Feels like it gets earlier and earlier every year, but tomorrow's the day, man. Tuesday, we got two games on tap, and then pretty much a full slate Wednesday, save for, I think, the team's playing tomorrow.
All right, dude. So let's jump right into it. It's been a whirlwind of an offseason, and as you said, here we are. A lot of trades went down. A lot of superstars changed teams. A lot of crazy first-round draft picks going left and right. Teams showing their hands and showing that we're in a new era. The era of teams going all in for it, man. We're done with most of the league just treading water, being in the middle of the pack, hoping for the best. Now you're either tanking flat out or, now with this expanded playoff format, you're going for it. Sort of like in the League of Legends. We expanded the playoffs, less teams tank, more teams stay in it for the long haul, and hopefully that makes the NBA product better. Now, my head is spinning. Like, there's so much room for activities here. I don't know where to begin, but you know what? I think a good place to start is we are in New York. You're wearing a Knicks jersey. I've got on my Knicks hat. And, it's been established on the show that we are big Knicks fans. We do live in the New York area, and we hate our team. We love them. We hate them. They suck. They're awesome. Mostly they suck. And let's just start with them, Bob. Let's start with the Atlantic Division. Let's start with the New York Knickerbockers. I'm just going to get this off my chest now. We are 3 minutes into the first episode of the new season, and I want it to be established that I think the Knicks are butt. I hated their offseason. We made one major move. Should have made more, at least one more move. And Bob knows what I'm talking about. We'll touch on that in a hot second. But I want it to be established early that I'm disgusted. And let that set the tone for the next season.
Yeah, I'm sure you've used that word many a time discussing the Knicks over the years, especially on this podcast, without a doubt.
Yep.
How repulsed, disgusted you are with the state of this franchise. I was pretty positive 2 years ago. They had a great season. They were a 4 seed and then fizzled out very quickly to the Atlanta Hawks. And last year was a massive disappointment. You had Julius Randle go from being one of the kings of New York and everybody loves him, bringing the Knicks to relevance that 1 year, that COVID-shortened season. But he had it with the fans. He went toe-to-toe with the fans, and you're going to lose that battle every time. Especially in New York. New York is not the place to mess with the fans and piss them off and try to fight against them. So he went from being on the top to now pretty much at the bottom. He's still on the roster, though. He's still their best player. But when your team is led by Julius Randle, you don't have high hopes. He's a good player. He doesn't suck. They're actually not paying him like an exorbitant amount. He's kind of getting paid what he deserves. But again, he's more of probably a third best player on a team, on a good team. But he's our best player. And I love that the scroll right here says Knicks suck because that's very accurate. Now, the problem, though, is...
I did it myself.
Yes, I bet you did. I'm sure you did. But the problem is they're in NBA purgatory, which is where you don't want to be. You don't want to be in that middle ground where you're clearly not good enough to win a championship, and you're also not bad enough to get one of the top prospects in the draft. They're right in the middle with a lot of other teams. And this team will be a little better with Jalen Brunson coming in. given him, what, 5 years or 4 years, I think, $100 million contract. They even hired his dad to the coaching staff, and he had a relationship with Leon Rose, the Knicks president. So, it's a good move. I think it improves them slightly, but this team is not a serious playoff contender. At best, they're a fringe playoff contender. And really, if you're looking for any kind of hope, you really just want to see, can R.J. Barrett take another step? Can he make another leap going into year 4? Can Obi Toppin, the man I'm wearing the jersey of right here, number 1, can he make a jump at all? That's all you're looking for as a Knicks fan, is who can maybe break out, because we're not getting the big fish in free agency. That's been established for many years now. So the only way we're going to be able to build it is organically. So guys like that, and you want to throw in Emmanuel Quickly, Quentin Grimes, whoever else, these young players really need to step up.
Now, you made a lot of good points there, and I do want to touch on what the Knicks did this offseason, which is effectively, besides Jalen Brunson, nothing. I know some analysts and some things that I've read online are painting the Isaiah Hartenstein signing as a good one behind Mitch, who Mitch typically plays about 28 minutes a game, give or take. Doesn't really play 30, 35 minutes a game. But if he's going to play 28, give or take minutes, Hartenstein, 20 minutes, just the fact that I'm talking about Isaiah Hartenstein should tell you where the Knicks are as a franchise, okay? Because I shouldn't be talking about this Jamoke, and I mean, I'm trying to think of other ways to say disgusted, repulsed. Just, I'm gonna have to
disappointed.
Just a little bit of everything. I'm gonna look up some other words to use there, because that's really all that comes to mind when I look at this Knicks roster. I don't expect them to be anything special. As a matter of fact, and they screwed everything up when they didn't trade for Donovan Mitchell, when they didn't trade Julius Randle. They ruined it. They ruined what could have been a useful offseason. We could have gotten Brunson. We could have traded for Mitchell. And you know what? I don't want to hear nothing about, these unprotected picks that Utah wanted. Give them the picks. Give them all. Give them whatever they want. Give them players. Give them picks. Who cares? Are we really talking, Quentin Grimes really is going to turn into that stud that we need? Really? Give me a break. The big deal broke down because of unprotected draft picks. Stupid. This is why the Knicks suck. They don't have the sand to make the moves they got to make.
They don't. And also, Leon Rose overplayed his hand. He thought, there's no other suitors that are serious enough, and I don't need to give in at all. But as it turned out, Danny Ainge held his ground, and he's a seasoned vet at this. He's been a successful VP of operations and general manager for 20 years now, between the Celtics and now the Jazz the last few seasons. So Danny Ainge just waited till a better deal came along. He was under no pressure to trade Mitchell, and it also helped that Donovan Mitchell never requested a trade. Of course, he wanted to be in New York. He was training in New York over the offseason during the summer. A lot of guys were. And, yeah, he wanted to come home to New York. He's a big Mets fan. His dad works for the Mets. He grew up locally in New York. So it would have been great, and it would have excited the fan base. But the Knicks weren't willing to give more unprotected picks, which doesn't make any sense to me. The only caveat to that is, yes, Mitchell would have been exciting, and Knicks would have been better than they currently are right now. But it still wouldn't have made them a championship contender. At the same time, though, I still would have done it because you need a star if you're going to attract other stars. We still don't have that. That's non-existent for the Knicks. And really, this franchise is stuck in the mud. They're not going anywhere. They're status quo pretty much. The only additions were Jalen Brunson and Isaiah Hartenstein. So it's not all doom and gloom. Like I mentioned, they still have some young pieces. They still have cap flexibility. They don't really have anyone tied up to a disgusting amount of money or a lot of years, except maybe Fournier. But even Fournier could probably get moved in the right kind of deal. But still, the product's not going to be great. I think their over-under number for total wins is 38.5, which puts you right in the middle. I'm talking about right around 500. Maybe make the playoffs. Probably they're a play-in team potentially, but I don't see them making the field of 8 or in the East. So we're both down on the Knicks, and it's understandably so. They didn't get the big fish that they wanted. They struck out once again in the offseason. And Jalen Brunson, nice player, but not going to be that kind of difference maker to make them a whole lot better from last season.
So let's move on from the shit show that the New York Knicks are. We're going to move on to something a little better and something worth talking about. But before we do, I want to remind you guys that betting.net is your best bet for sportsbook and casino sites. So head on over to betting.net. Now, Bob, let's move on to a team that's actually relevant, and let's talk about the Brooklyn Nets. Now, this is a team that's been mired in turmoil in the last year plus, a lot of drama, a lot of off-the-court nonsense, and the on-court product just hasn't been quite right. I mean, yes, Durant came within a big toe of literally carrying this team on his back and beating the Milwaukee Bucks, 2 years ago now, I think, at this point?
Yes, the COVID no, it wasn't the bubble season. It was 2021. And, yeah, that was the year the Bucks wound up winning the championship.
That feels like eons ago at this point with all the drama and all the nonsense that's been going on with this team. But here we are, right? They say time heals all things, right? And maybe in this case, maybe time just will heal all things, because even though this isn't a team that you look at up and down and say, oh, man, they're so deep. They've got studs everywhere. They've got defensive stoppers everywhere, blah, blah, blah. This is not a well-balanced team. This team is very much top-heavy. It is the big three of KD, Kyrie, and Ben Simmons. And then it's a bunch of guys. It's shooters like Patty Mills, Joe Harris, and Seth Curry. It's wing defenders like Royce O'Neal. It's scorers like TJ Warren, who they signed in free agency. Very ho-hum outside that big three. But if you have a healthy and motivated Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons, that trio may very well be the best trio in the NBA.
I wouldn't go so far to say that, but yes, it would definitely be in contention. Definitely one that would be brought up as one of the better big threes, no doubt about it.
If they're all healthy and active and not pulling their off the court BS of, needing mental health time and fighting for social justices and faking injuries, I don't know, just a lot of nonsense. But if these guys are on the court and they're all playing together, which big three is better?
Oh, well, Clay, Curry, and Wiggins, not Draymond. Forget about Draymond. Still a big impact player for that squad. Don't get me wrong there. But that's definitely one that comes right to mind. Now, granted, the Celtics don't have necessarily a clear third guy, but I love Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. You look at the Heat, they got Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, if you want to throw Kyle Lowry in there. Kevin Durant and Kyrie are ridiculously good. But, what is Ben Simmons right now? We haven't seen him play in forever. Sat out all of last year with his issues, his mental health issues, combined with later a back injury. So we didn't see him at all last year. We know he was shook after he missed that, or didn't even attempt a layup or dunk in that game against the Hawks, and they wound up fizzling out in that second round 2 years ago, just like the Nets did, although at least the Nets were fighting tooth and nail with the Bucks to the very end. So there's a few trios that I like a little more. I mean, if healthy, like you're saying with this trio, if the Nuggets have Joker, Michael Porter Jr., and Jamal Murray all healthy, that's a very good trio. And they're younger. So, age is also a factor here with the Nets. Kevin Durant is 33 now. Kyrie is probably 29 or 30. Now, Ben's still very young, but we don't know what to expect from Ben. He's not going to score. At least I look at those other trios. I know some guys can score. But I'm not totally down on it. Like, yes, I understand where someone can make that argument. They're all healthy. They can be a very dangerous team. But we know we just can't trust Kyrie most of all. He only played 29 games played. You alluded to some of the issues that they've had there. The only thing that will help them and maybe put them as the best big three in the NBA, like you're talking about, is the fact that Kyrie does have to play for his contract. He's playing for his next contract. He wasn't traded like he wanted to be. He did wind up on the Lakers, and he didn't get the max extension offer that he was expecting or that Kevin Durant wanted him to get. And it was crazy to think that Kevin Durant demands a trade, and he actually didn't get his wishes. I love that the Nets held their ground. I mean, I don't want to see the Nets do well, but I appreciate them for actually being like, no, we don't have to trade you. And plus, if you didn't want to be here, you could have not signed that max extension last year. So screw you, basically. So yeah,
Yep.
the Nets still are a very good roster, but I don't know. Are we going to get the best of Kyrie? You would think so, because he does have plenty of motivation. He's going to have $100+ million contract offer if he does play a majority of games.
Listen, I mean, you ran down some nice big threes, but let's be completely honest, dude. If this team is on, I mean, yeah, Curry's a top player, but I don't care about Klay Thompson anymore. He's, as far as I'm concerned, he's on his downward slope. This ain't the Klay that's dropping 60 in a game or 50 in a game or dropping 10 threes in a game because he can. I think those days are over. And I don't even want to talk about Andrew Wiggins. And there's no other team that's got a third.
You
piece.
Want to talk about Ben Simmons? I'll take Wiggins
or
Ben Simmons right
because as much as we've shit on that man on this show, and we've leaned into Ben Simmons on this show, but as much as we want to talk about how much he's soft mentally, emotionally, lacks that testicular fortitude that you look for in a franchise centerpiece, he's still a good player, man. And he's still in the real NBA, in the real world, real league, not fantasy or whatever. He's still one of the better players with an elite skill set. He can handle, he can play defense on all 5 positions. He doesn't need the ball to be effective. He doesn't need to hog the ball. And with a team that has 2 alphas in Durant and Kyrie, he just has to play defense and don't screw up. Since he's not in the spotlight, like in Philadelphia, he was in the spotlight. All right. They expected him with Joel Embiid. Yes, Embiid was the alpha, but we expected Ben Simmons to really step up and, maybe average close to 20 a game, 10 assists, show some of that all-around game we know he can do. He doesn't have to worry about that now. No one expects anything out of him. Nothing. In fact, if he even plays half the season and doesn't have any more issues of mental well-being or physical ailments, back issues, or whatever, if he actually plays half the year, I mean, I think Brooklyn fans would be happy with that. That's how low it's gotten. And we're talking about a former all-star.
No, they got to get 60 games out of him at least. If you get 60, you sign up for that.
You don't forget how to play basketball. This should be like riding a bike for him. Yes, he had traumatic experience in the playoffs and whatever, and he may not ever shoot a 3, but he doesn't have to. That's not his role on this team.
And I think one trio that you're overlooking as well is Paul, Booker, and Ayton out in Phoenix. They had the best record last year. Yeah, they had a disappointing playoffs, but that's a great trio as well. But we can't get too wrapped up in the trio because I'll take, say what Cleveland has in their starting lineup over, those 3 and whatever else the Nets can offer between Joe Harris and Patty Mills and all those guys, Nick Claxton. So the Pelicans, I love their starting lineup. If Zion's healthy, come back with Brandon Ingram, Valanciunas, CJ McCollum. That could be a very dangerous team. The Timberwolves, another team on the rise. Now, of course, we're going to get to these later. We're covering the Atlantic right now, but when we get too caught up and be like, oh, this trio, that trio. Right now, a lot of these trios are kind of flawed. It's not the Heatles anymore. It's not, as much as I just said Klay, Curry, and Wiggins right now, Klay, Curry, and Draymond, 5-6 years ago, that was the elite trio. So it goes in cycles, but right now, I mean, I'm not as high on that Brooklyn trio as you are.
And that's fine. That's why we have these conversations. We get it out there, discuss it, and I can tell you how much you suck and how wrong you are. But let's move on. All right. Enough with these 2 joker franchises in Brooklyn and the Knicks. Let's talk about some teams that actually matter. Let's talk Celtics, let's talk 76ers, and let's talk Raptors. Well, maybe not Raptors so much, but at least the other 2, because 2 of those three teams that I just mentioned should very well be in the thick of it for not only the top seed in the Eastern Conference, but legitimate playoff and championship contenders. And I, of course, am talking about the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, both of these teams were talked about a lot this offseason, and understandably so. Boston, on one hand, had a lot of late offseason drama with their head coach, Ime Udoka. He got suspended by the Boston Celtics franchise, not by the NBA, for violating team rules of basically fraternizing with employees, coworkers. I guess they have a franchise rule where you're not allowed to date or anything like that employees of the team if you work for the team, or I don't really know what the rule is, but he broke it is all that matters. He was dating some woman within the Celtics franchise, and they suspended him for the season. Now, to touch on that quickly before going on to the players and the roster itself, why would you suspend the coach for dating a female employee in the organization and not just fire him? Why go through this nonsense and public spectacle of suspending the guy? Oh, we're going to suspend him. What is this?
It is a good question. It is a Celtics rule, but I imagine a lot of other teams have it in place. I mean, it's not unusual in the corporate world. There's plenty of plenty of rules,
and that's fine.
HR rules where, they don't encourage. They try to discourage any fraternizing between employees, and especially with both of them, both him and the woman are both married with kids, and it's a bad look. And I guess
the rule itself, I don't have a problem with. I mean, I think we're all adults, so maybe a rule like
that too. But if it's a rule, it's a rule. It's like
it's a rule.
I go to a new company and it's in the rules. I gotta abide by it, even if I don't agree with it.
They're a private organization. They are allowed to have whatever rules they want for their employees, and he broke that rule. That's fine. But come on, man. What's the point of just suspending the guy? It looks stupid. It feels juvenile. It feels like it's the parent who's grounding their kid for staying out too late. You give them a slap, and it's like, oh, okay, we're gonna take your phone for a week. Oh, no car privileges for a month. But then the kid's gonna get the cell phone back. The kid's gonna get the car back. This coach is gonna have his job back. One of the most prestigious jobs in sports.
Well, I think they figured they really do like him. They want him as part of their franchise, but they knew, if they just give him a little slap on the wrist, like a couple games, 10 games, it still emboldens anyone else in that organization or other organizations to be like, oh, I'm only going to get 10 games. So they figured, all right, let's suspend him. I mean, they might wind up firing him anyway at the end of the year. I mean, I bet he's practically on probation. Like, he is a little kid. I'm sure it's going to be, he can't have other violations while this suspension's going on. But he's going to miss the entire year. He's not going to be back till next offseason.
Now, realistically, Bob, because the NBA is a superstar-driven league, whereas in the NFL, you need an upper echelon head coach to win a championship. Like, you're not going to see a Zach Taylor, for example, a mediocre bottom-of-the-barrel head coach winning a championship, despite the fact that he has possibly the most talented quarterback in the NFL right now, outside of Pat Mahomes or of Josh Allen. Outside of those two guys, Joe Burrow might very well be the third best quarterback in the NFL talent-wise right now. So you have an elite quarterback, you have elite weapons, you have elite running back, an elite defense, and you can't win a chip because your coach sucks. In the NBA, that's not really a thing. The NBA is not swimming with elite coaches and elite assistants and stuff like that. It's very much a superstar-driven league. So how big of a deal is Ime Udoka not being on the bench this season for the Celtics?
I think it will affect them a little bit, but not a whole lot, because, like you're saying, they still have star players and they have a really good roster. They definitely go 10 deep, in my opinion, when they're at full strength. It's going to hurt at the beginning because, you got to adjust to the interim head coach. You don't have Ime Udoka there. And last year, I loved him as a hire. And also, I like the Celtics team as much as I hate the Celtics, and I'm sick of seeing them always be a good franchise. I just respect them. I know they're well run. They have their clear rules, and they're good at drafting, whether it was Danny Ainge in the past or Brad Stevens now in his front office position. So it's going to hurt at least at first. And also part of that is because they do have a few injuries. Danilo Gallinari, who they brought over in the offseason, might miss potentially the entire year. He's going to try to come back, but he tore the L. So even if he does come back, it's going to be probably in the playoffs. And then you have Robert Williams, who's a young up-and-coming star center, at least defensively. He's going to miss at least 2 months, maybe even longer. So those are two big injuries. Williams, obviously, more so than Gallinari. Gallinari wasn't going to play more than, say, 15 or 20 minutes a game in a bench role. But you also bring in Malcolm Brogdon. He's always had problems staying healthy. At least he's healthy and good to go for the season. But It'll affect him early on, I think, but they'll hit their stride, kind of like last year. Even. Hey, Ime Udoka was in his first year. I picked him to win Coach of the Year. He didn't. He wound up second to Monty Williams with the Phoenix Suns, but we saw Udoka had a positive effect on that team. I think they had the best record after the calendar turned to 2022. Definitely after the All-Star break, they were on fire. And you saw them ride that success all the way to the NBA Finals. So it's going to be hard to replace a guy like that. So I don't think it'll affect them overall so much so that they're not like a top 4 seed. I'm still going to tell you right now they're one of my top 4 seeds when we do make it. But, yeah, at the beginning of the year, it wouldn't surprise me if they're struggling a little bit out of the gate.
Now, let's focus now on this roster because you did touch on a few players. You touched on Brogdon and a couple other guys. This Celtics team is one of the deepest, and it's a shame that Gallo got hurt. I think you said a torn ACL or whatever it is, but it sucks that Gallo got hurt. He's out for the year. Robert Williams is a key piece of this team. Most recent update was from like earlier October that he would be expected to return to basketball activities within 8 to 12 weeks. Now, that was a few weeks ago, and I haven't seen really any other updates on him since. I think he's not expected to return at this point, at least until December, possibly January at this point. But more recent reports, like I said, from earlier this month said that he had been trouble putting weight on it, and it's going to be an interesting recovery process. But apparently we're not worried about this knee injury being a long-term issue. So once he's back, he should be back with no real restrictions. But until then, Al Horford, Grant Williams, they're going to be the main guys in the paint holding it down until he gets back. His loss, I think, does affect them because I don't like Al Horford. I know he fits their system and he plays well for them. And in real life, he's a better player than he is in fantasy or in people's minds. But I don't know, man. I have this thing about old, immobile bigs he's a good passer, still useful in the paint. But how much are you really getting out of Horford? And he is essentially their only relevant big because, let's be honest, Grant Williams is there, but Grant Williams doesn't inspire any sort of confidence. And they got Blake Griffin, but this is a washed Blake Griffin at this point, and they got Luke Cornett. Yuck. Their wings, their guards, stacked. Smart, White, Brogdon, Brown, Tatum, stacked. Absolutely stacked. But
right, they need Robert Williams if they're going to make a playoff push and if they have any expectations of going back to the finals. Yeah, they're going to need that because I do like the Blake signing, but yeah, that's more like a regular season type deal.
Yeah,
he'll help because he's still capable, but like you mentioned, he's not the same player he once was. Everyone knows that, but he still belongs in the league. Can still play. Sure, give you some minutes. He's not some scrub completely, but yes, they need Robert Williams if they're going to go far. He's not their maybe third or fourth best player, but because of the impact he has defensively, they need him. So it's going to hurt at least to begin, but you mentioned it. Their guards are loaded. I expect Derek White to be a lot better this year, a full season with the team. He was a big trade deadline acquisition last year, had his moments at times, but eventually did disappear in the finals. Grant Williams stinks. He's much better for playing that 10 to 15 minutes on a nightly basis in the regular season, but he got exposed against the Warriors, and Al Horford had a big game or two, but he also faded. So yeah, you need some young, fresh legs, and Robert Williams is that prototypical guy that they need healthy for their stretch run.
All right, so let's stop talking about Williams and Williams. It sounds like an awful attorneys group. Law firm, yeah, just Williams and Williams. It sounds awful. But let's move on from these clowns. Let's go to the 76ers because the 76ers are the other team that I mentioned in this division that are not only contenders for the number one spot in the East, but legitimate championship contenders. And that's assuming that both Joel Embiid and James Harden can stay on the court all season and play well together and mesh well with the rest of the team. Now, that being said, Bob, my love for James Harden is well known in our friend circle, well known in our fantasy league, former fantasy league, Yiddy. Everybody knows how dear James Harden is to my heart. My favorite NBA player. Huge fan of his game. Been for years. Every year, if I can, I have him on my team. Reports say that he's in the best shape coming into a season that he's been in years, which I kind of believe, given all the drama from his last two stops and how he left those teams to go to his new destinations. Of course, I'm talking about from Houston to the Nets, and then from the Nets over to Philly. He ain't fat. He ain't out of shape. He's not wearing a fat suit or anything crazy in pregame warmups. He's not dealing with any injuries. Can this team take that step with Embiid and Harden at the top? Is this? I think they're legit. Do you agree?
I definitely think they're legit. And to start with Harden, look, players don't like getting criticized, especially these athletes. They're at the top of their game, especially a former MVP like Harden. Yeah, they don't like hearing the chatter. They don't like hearing the noise that they come up small in big games and that they force their way out and their toughness is questioned, their integrity and their drive. They don't like it, but this is why it's needed, because it's motivation. And that's what, yeah, of course they don't want to hear it from us, but they also don't like hearing it from former NBA stars like Chuck Barkley or Shaq on the CNC show. They don't like it, but hey, they hear it and it is motivation, because they're already getting paid. So there's not a ton of motivation there. They've already made skazillions of dollars. Yeah, they still want their next contract. Don't get me wrong. And he did get his contract, as it turned out. Daryl Morey, his skimp, gave him the contract that he wanted and still guaranteed him $90 to $100 million over the next 3 years. But hey, it motivated him to get into shape. And sometimes you need that. I mean, we even look at real quickly another NFL analogy that you were touching on with some of the quarterbacks there. Locally, we see the Jets and Giants having a lot of success. Someone like Saquon Barkley kept getting ripped. And you heard him talk a lot in the offseason about, how it motivated him and he was going to show people. And so far, he has been doing that. So, yeah, well, players don't like hearing it. And sometimes they have valid reasons for having disappointing seasons, usually due to injury like him. Harden, that really hasn't been as much the case. He's had injuries that I think are because he's been out of shape. He's had soft tissue injuries. It's not like he, tore his ACL or had some freak injury. He's been getting random leg injuries to his hamstrings and calves that usually you can avoid if you're in good shape. So I do buy into the fact that he's in better shape now. And I do love this roster. Again, another team in the Knicks division that's better than them. And I actually hate this team. I don't like the Sixers. I don't like the Celtics. But that's more about the jersey. As far as the players and the roster, I love how it's constructed. I think Tyrese Maxey's a big-time up-and-coming player. I love the bench pieces they got. I was saying to you and Greg earlier, I think they have the best bench in the East. I love those additions. You get PJ Tucker, who probably will start, but the prototypical vet 3-and-D guy, you know what you're going to get out of him. You also have DeAnthony Melton, who had a nice season for the Grizzlies last year. I was surprised they even traded him. They could still use him. And then the guy that I just realized got signed with them, earlier this week. He got signed longer ago, but Montrezl Harrell, who was with the Hornets, he's a high energy player, and he's gonna be good for Embiid off the bench. Or if when Embiid misses his 10 to 15 games, he'll be able to step in and give a little scoring punch. Not gonna be the defensive player that Embiid is, obviously, but yeah, it's a very good roster. You can't forget about Tobias Harris and Matisse Thybulle at 3. They both offer one a lot of scoring and space in the floor, the other playing lockdown defense. So they're just a well-rounded team, and I fully expect this team to be one of the best teams in the East by far. One of the best teams in the NBA.
I look at Philadelphia's roster. I couldn't agree more, and I hate that I say that out loud. Because, like I said at the beginning, we're in New York, right? And this is a weird time as a New York sports fan because we have the Giants who are 5-1, right? We got the Jets who just beat the Packers and beat them impressively, actually. We've got the Rangers who are one of the best teams in the league and arguably have three top 15 to 20 players in the NHL. We got the Islanders. We've got the Yankees who are in Game 5. I don't know if that game's even started yet because of the rain, but the Yankees are in Game 5 against the Indians. Or I'm sorry, the Guardians.
No, they should still be the Indians, but that's another
old story. Old habit against the Guardians, and the Mets won a ton of games. Pete Alonso was a beast this year. So like all these New York teams have a lot to go for them. And then there's the Knicks.
Of course.
Then there's the Knicks. And they so happen to be in a division with 2 championship contenders. Actually, I'm sorry, with 3 championship contenders, 2 very legitimate title contenders, and a team in Toronto. That's not too bad. And I think with Philadelphia, I am in love with this team, even though I hate them because obviously, New York's #New York problems. But I love this roster. If James Harden is James Harden, now he doesn't even have to be the Harden that was dropping 40 a game, doing 40 and 15s and stuff in Houston. He doesn't have to be that James. Just do 20 and 10. Just do 20 and 10. This team should win 60 games if these 2 guys play the whole year and stay healthy. Like, this roster is stacked. To have Tobias Harris as your number 4, I love that. I think Maxi's going to take a huge step forward this season. He's in a prime spot to make a lot of noise this year. And if he steps up, as I expect him to, I mean, this might very well be the best team in the East. No disrespect to Milwaukee, which we'll get to in a bit. But outside my love for Philadelphia, let's finish up the Atlantic before we move on to the next 2 divisions in the East. Let's go to Toronto. And this feels weird to look at this roster and think, like, it's good. Van Vliet, Gary Trent Jr., OG, Scotty Barnes, Siakam. This is a solid starting 5. You got a little bit of everything. Your point guard who can handle and score. Your shooting guard who's a legitimate 3-point threat on the wing. OG who's a little bit of everything. Good defense, athletic. Scotty Barnes who's a little bit of everything. Siakam, same thing. Like, these are legitimate pieces. But there's just something not right about this team. I think they're a playoff team, and I fully expect them to be there when it's all said and done. But I don't know. They're definitely not a championship contender. For me, they're more like in that 7 to 10 range. 7 to like 7-8 range, I think is fair to put Toronto at this point. I don't know if that's where I'm going to put them when we do our predictions, but they're in that range.
They're certainly toward the bottom of the playoffs in the East.
Does anything stand out to you about this Toronto team? Good starting lineup, meh bench. Is it the lack of depth?
I think it's partially the depth. I think it's also that they just don't have like that defensive anchor. Now, Siakam's a good defensive player, but he's more a guy who's going to be a wing defender. But I don't think they have that presence in the paint that's going to be intimidating other teams like a lot of the best teams in the East have, whether it's Embiid, whether it's Robert Williams once he gets back to the Celtics, even Giannis. I mean, he's not the prototypical guy in the middle, but he is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate every year. So whereas they just don't have that guy. Chris Boucher's shown flashes, but he's not that type of player. So that's part of it. And then, I worry about their bench scoring. I don't see Thaddeus Young or Malachi Flynn lighting the world on fire. It's a good team, and they have a good coach. I think Nick Nurse is a solid coach, but those reasons, and then the fact that they just don't have a top 15 or 20 player. We know all these teams in the NBA that win ever since the Detroit Pistons. They were the random team that didn't necessarily have a top 20 guy that won a championship. But almost all the teams that win have an elite superstar, which they don't have. Siakam's a very good player. I expect Scotty Barnes to continue to get better. Fred VanVleet is very underrated. He is a great player, but no one's calling him a top 15 player at all. So they don't have that. They don't have the Tatum, the Embiid, the Giannis.
Now, you had mentioned, before we move on from Toronto, you had mentioned that Toronto doesn't really have that big that you look for in the paint to hold it down. In today's NBA, do you really need one of those? Do you really need a towering defender who shuts down the paint? Like, do you really need that in today's league?
That's part of the reason why I said defensive anchor. I didn't necessarily say a center because even you look at the Warriors, they don't have that guy. James Wiseman's continually been hurt and been a disappointing second overall pick.
Yeah, but Looney was solid for him. Looney was solid.
But we know Draymond Green's the anchor of that defense. And you look at some of the better teams, obviously Embiid is a big defensive presence. I mentioned, I think, Bam Adebayo with the Heat. He's a player that could be Defensive Player of the Year.
My boy.
Now the Suns, I mean, the Suns have been really good for a few years, and they don't necessarily have that because Ayton is good, but he's not elite defensively at all. But maybe that is why they haven't been able to, win the championship. They came close a couple years ago. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, and that's definitely a fair hole in the argument. But for the most part, you need some kind of elite defender, and as good as Siakam is, he's not changing the game enough to be like vaulting the Raptors into title contention.
No, that he's not. So let's move on from the Atlantic because we spent a majority of this show talking about the Atlantic Division, and rightfully so. This is our home division. So, of course, we were going to give them a lot more love than others. But we're going to move on. And before we do, I want to remind you guys that your top sportsbook comparison site is betting.net, and betting.net offers extensive reviews on the best sports books out there. So head on over to betting.net. Now, let's move on. We still got so much to cover. We spent way too much time on the Atlantic. So let's speed this up a little bit. Let's go through the Central Division. Bucks, Bulls, Cavs, Pacers, Pistons. Two of these teams are legit. One is a championship contender, and two of them should be toiling somewhere near the bottom, and fighting for, what's one of the more touted and what's the word I'm looking for? Exciting upcoming rookie classes. We got the top two picks are candidates that, honestly, if you have the first or second pick, flip a coin, you won. Pretty much. But that aside, this is, for me, a very intriguing division because, yes, the Milwaukee Bucks own it. They are maybe the best team in the East outside of these two Atlantic teams. And Giannis is a candidate for MVP every year, Defensive Player of the Year, All-Star, just GOATY. If you were starting a franchise, most people would probably lean towards Giannis as their building block. But the Cavs, Bob, we spent last season, every time we did this show, every few weeks, I would ask you if you felt that were the Cavs legit? Are the Cavs real? Because for most of the year, they were huddling around like the third, fourth, fifth seed. As the season went on, things kind of balanced themselves out, but they were in the thick of it. They were in the thick of it for most of the season. They have a lot of young, quality players. And now, unfortunately, they have Donovan Mitchell. He should be a Knick. He's not. We've come to terms with it. It's fine. It's not fine. I hate my team, but it's fine. He's in Cleveland, all right? They gave up those unprotected first-round picks that Utah wanted. Here we are. They might have the worst defensive guard duo in the NBA with Garland and Mitchell, but they have one of the most talented guard duos, if not the most talented young guard duo in the NBA. Evan Mobley's a stud. Jared Allen is that defensive anchor you talked about, rebounding defense in the paint, got a big fat deal. Their wings are solid. LeVert, Okoro, Osman. They've got Love off the bench if he's ever healthy. This is a good team, man. So I ask you now, yet again, are the Cleveland Cavaliers legit?
Yeah, 100%, especially after adding Mitchell. And I loved Evan Mobley coming out of the draft last year. I knew he could have an impact right away just because he had a good shooting stroke and also was a guy who racked up blocks. A lot of that translates to the NBA now, especially when you have the size that he does. I mean, he's arguably a better defensive player, especially as he continues to grow, than Jared Allen. I mean, Jared Allen's a very good defensive player. He misses games every year, unfortunately, lately. Jared Allen does. But yeah, the starting lineup is quite. I love it. You have the two guards. Granted, they're undersized. It would be hard defensively. But Garland's one of the best young up-and-coming point guards. We know Donovan Mitchell is a microwave. He can get hot and go for 25, go for 40 on a given night if he gets really hot. Then you have either Isaac Okoro starting at small forward or Karis LeVert. Probably, I think it would be better if LeVert comes off the bench and have that scoring punch coming off the bench. But yeah, I still think Milwaukee's going to be better, mainly because they have the superstar, the known commodity, a top three player, arguably the best player in the entire NBA. And you look at the Milwaukee roster and you still feel like they're not a lot of sexy names, but
Not
there's
at
a
all.
reason why they've kept that roster together. Mike Budenholzer, he's gotten a lot of flack in the past, and somewhat deservedly so. But we know during the regular season, he usually owns the regular season, and the Bucks are always toward the top of that division, and they play hard. So even though, guys like Pat Connaughton and Wes Matthews aren't terribly inspiring, they play their role. Grayson Allen, guys like that, Brooke Lopez. I see your face, and I sometimes do the same faces, but I'm like, this team's been winning. And Chris Middleton being out for potentially a month is going to hurt. But, hey, I think they got to manage his mileage anyway. Maybe you get a full season out of Drew Holiday. That's still a solid trio. It's not a top 5 trio at all. But Giannis is so great that Milwaukee's still going to be a team to reckon with in the East. And I still think they're better than Cleveland.
I'm a huge fan of Milwaukee. And I know as much as we've discussed this off the air a lot, especially in our chats and whatnot, I really like Cleveland. I know Greg's a huge fan of Cleveland. He's buying in on them. He's all in. And I voiced concerns that they're talented, but we've seen talented teams before. A lot of young talent, up-and-coming guys, just not be quite right. And I don't know if it's just the youth, if it's the fact that it's the Cavs without LeBron, and I want to see them do it first. I'm not sure what it is, but I'm not ready to anoint the Cleveland Cavaliers as a legitimate threat to Milwaukee at this point. But besides these two teams, Bob, Indiana and Detroit suck. I'm sorry, Indiana. I'm sorry, Indiana fans. I'm sorry to Risley, Steve. I know you're an Indiana guy, or IU, but I don't know if you're a Pacers fan. I think Mike might be a Pacers fan. I don't know. Either way, that team's butt cheeks. We love Tyrese Halliburton. The man's going to be one of the top guards in the league. He should put up crazy stats if he's healthy. But outside of him, Miles Turner and nobody else. You're really just hoping for a lot. Matter of fact, Turner and Buddy Hield should probably be Lakers at some point this season if the Lakers get their act together and decide to trade some first-round picks and get some actual talent on that team. Because as of now, I'm looking at the Lakers, and I'm not impressed. But we'll get to the West later. These two teams, Bob, the Pacers and the Pistons, both these teams probably going to be toiling away at the bottom of the standings, going to be fighting for that top pick or one of those top 2 picks. Is there anything with either of these two teams, Cade, Jaden Ivey, whatever, in Detroit, is there anything worth watching outside of these young players?
So one thing that the NBA fans like to talk about, and especially that Bill Simmons, the ESPN writer a long time ago, created his own website, The Ringer, all that. He used to always do columns about the NBA League Pass, like the most watchable teams, like fun teams to watch. I do think the Pistons fit into that category of one of those young, exciting teams. Yeah, they're not going to win a lot of games, but they have young, exciting star players. Cade Cunningham, we both loved last year. I mean, he's the #1 pick, so of course he's expected to do great things, but he made a late push for Rookie of the Year, wound up going to Scotty Barnes, but he definitely made his case late, and we expect even better things in year 2. I love Jaden Ivey. He might be my pick for Rookie of the Year. We'll see. He's going to get plenty of opportunities at shooting guard. Sadiq Bey, I don't necessarily love his game, but he is a nice source of threes. He is pretty big. He could rebound more. I think he needs to improve on certain areas of his game because he doesn't offer a lot of rebounds or assists, but he can fill it up. And, hey, even some of their centers, Isaiah Stewart, not a big scorer, but he can be a defensive presence. They drafted Jalen Durant. So I think the Pistons are going to be a fun team to watch. And the other thing I like is that Dwayne Casey is a good head coach. He's had success before with the Toronto Raptors, and I just think they're building it the right way here with the Pistons. The only thing I got to say about the Pacers is they're not going to tank right away. They're not that type of organization that is going to do that. But at some point, they know what they are. They know they need to trade Miles Turner and get something for him. Miles Turner is not part of their long-term plans, nor should Buddy Hield be. And those are attractive pieces to a team like the Lakers or other contenders. So they're gonna be not a complete pushover, at least early on, but eventually they're gonna get to that point. You just got to see Tyrese Halliburton maybe take that next step, and then even look out for their draft pick, Benedict Mathurin out of Arizona. I think he was 6th He was drafted right after Jaden Ivey. So he's maybe a dark horse player that's going to get a lot of burn at some point, and maybe could be fun to watch. But yeah, between those two teams, I really like the trajectory that the Pistons are on.
I like the Pistons a lot more than I like the Pacers, and I'm going to put the Pacers firmly in what's this kid's name? Victor
Wembanyama. Wembanyama. Yes.
Victor Wembanyama. I feel like I'm watching Lion King. But anyway, they are firmly in top pick range. I think Indiana's going to – it's just a matter of time until Indiana moves on from Buddy Hield, Miles Turner. They might just keep Tyrese Halliburton and hope for the best from there. Hope they get that top pick to get that big man and have a crazy pick and roll duo for the next decade. But I think Indiana's firmly in one of the worst teams in the NBA. Right down there with the next team that I want to talk about, one of the teams I want to talk about in the Southeast Division, the Orlando Magic. I feel bad starting with them in the Southeast Division.
It's fine. We got to switch it up. Can't always start with the contenders.
I feel bad starting with them. Shout out to Orlando, but here we are. We started from the bottom, and we're still at the bottom. If it's not the Pacers, I like Orlando's talent, but I don't see Orlando doing anything this season either, dude.
They're still a mess. They don't have a head coach to speak of, and it's just they're the Sacramento Kings of the East. I mean, they're just constantly stuck toward the bottom, and you just can't win with a team comprised almost entirely of young players. Even a team like the Grizzlies have a lot of success that maybe someone would counter with. They have a guy like Steven Adams who's been there and a major vet in the league as a presence. Even look at some of their other pieces that they've had contribute. They're not all young pieces. They have some vets that can help them out. Magic don't have that. What do they got? Wendell Carter's probably their oldest player, and he's like 24, 25. It's just hard to win. I mean, yes, we like stockpiling talent. It's all well and good, but at some point, they're going to have to trade some of these assets and maybe somehow get a star. But it's unlikely because no one wants to go there. Yeah, we like Cole Anthony or Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, the number one overall pick. Mo Bamba showed some nice signs last year. Even started hitting threes out of nowhere. Not only being a defensive presence. Franz Wagner had a nice rookie season, but it's just a bunch of guys that aren't going to excel and succeed because they don't have a veteran presence and they don't have a good coach.
Sucks to suck. And you know what? Before we move on, I want to remind you guys that The Grueling Truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. Head on over to betting.net. Now, I actually looked at the Orlando Magic roster, Bob, and they have Terrence Ross, who's 31, Gary Harris, who's 28, and other than that, the oldest person on their roster is a combination of Wagner, Admiral Schofield, Kevon Harris, and Jonathan Isaac at 25 years old. Everybody else is... Gary
Harris sucks. Terrence Ross is a fair one to throw out there. But yeah, that's not a veteran presence that's like in your starting lineup, He's definitely
Terrence Ross for an NBA roster comparison is like, the uncle you see at Thanksgiving who you don't really know what he does, but he's still alive, and that's awesome. You see him once a year. That's what Terrence Ross is. See him every year at Thanksgiving, and you're happy he's there.
Sounds about right. He's a good player, but yeah, his best days behind him, and yeah, he needs to be on a contending team. He shouldn't be toiling away in Orlando, although I'm sure he's still getting paid well, so he doesn't mind. And
so you know what? And you know what? Since we started at the bottom of the division, let's stay at the bottom. Let's work our way up. All right? Let's just stick down there. The Charlotte Hornets. LaMelo Ball going to miss the start of the season, maybe a week or two. Is there anything on that roster that's worth talking about outside of Ball?
I mean, even though I joked about PJ Washington before we started the show, I do think
I don't want to talk about PJ Washington.
I know. If he's healthy, no, I'm not going to go long.
I don't want to do
it. He'll have an impact, but not enough to make them a serious playoff contender or anything. And then, outside of that, I mean, the Hornets have a lot to be desired. And the biggest thing is that Miles Bridges, who broke out last year, was averaging 20 a game, had his major felony domestic violence charge happen. I think it was right around like 4th of July or something. And so he's a free agent right now. Terrible time to be doing something like that and getting arrested, especially on a felony charge. So his status for not only this year, but his entire career is in major jeopardy. So a lot of things trending down for the Hornets. As much as they were an exciting team last year and looked like on the rise, Bridges, combined with the fact that Ball is going to be hurt to start the year, albeit hopefully not too long, you can't get excited for the Hornets.
It's over for the Hornets. And I want to move on. I'm done with Charlotte. I'm done with Orlando. I'm done with these butt cheeks. Let's talk about some relevant teams, okay? Washington, Atlanta, Miami. One of these teams is a championship contender. One of them is an up-and-coming franchise. The other one, they got some pieces, but they're not quite right. I'm talking about, well, of course, 1 through 3, Miami, Atlanta, and Washington. Bob, let's go to Washington real quick, okay? Because they've got a very interesting roster. And you know I like Bradley Beal, my former Florida Gator. That's my boy. They added Monty Morris. They added Will Barton. They have Kristaps Porzingis. They have Kyle Kuzma. Two questions on this roster. One, is Kristaps going to play 30 games?
I thought you were going to say like 50. Yeah, I love how you went with 30.
Listen, over under 35. Over under 35 on Kristaps Porzingis. Go.
You know, I'll go wild. I'll say over, but that's not exactly. I don't think he's playing more than like 60, so it's still not going to be enough. I think he'll play like that 45 to 50 range. So yeah, I'll go over.
And 45 to 50 would be the first time he's played in that many games since he was still at Latvia or wherever the hell he's from. But and now my second question is, Bob, outside of the over-under for Kristaps Porzingis, is does anybody care about the Washington Wizards?
Yeah, this is definitely one of those franchises that no one's going to care to see. The Knicks would fit in that same category if they weren't in New York. They get talked about and are, relevant simply because of, them being a historical franchise. As much as they've had very little success in 50 years, it's New York, so they get talked about even. So they're still relevant in that sense. But yeah, I mean, let's see. So Porzingis last played his most games, the Knicks, of course, but since going to the Mavericks, he played 57 in 2019, and last year, between the Mavericks and the Wizards last year, he played 51. So, 51's about the number him. So I will stay with over 35, but we know he's going to miss plenty of time. It's just a given.
Yep.
Just based on his injury history and how tall he is, it's just going to happen. And yeah, I mean, it's very uninspiring roster. A lot of chatter over the last few years. Will Bradley Beal get traded? Well, no. He signed a contract extension. I hope he sticks with it at least for the next few years, because I don't want to hear him being like Durant. Obviously, he's nowhere nearly as good as him to be demanding a trade, but he could be a player that's on his way out in the next year or two. Hopefully, it's not because he's demanding a trade. Hopefully, the Wizards just realize we need to blow this up. This team ain't good enough. I liked Rui Hachimura coming out in the draft. He did. He hasn't lived up to being a lottery pick at all. He's had a few moments. Kyle Kuzma's still a solid player and a decent fantasy asset. But yeah, this team is right in that area with the Knicks that they're not even good to be interesting like the Raptors. At least with the Raptors, as much as we're like, yeah, they're not a title contender, they have some really good pieces, and you can see, all right, maybe if someone either becomes a superstar, they get a star, they could make some noise. Like the Knicks and the Wizards are just nowhere near that, and they're just totally in purgatory within the NBA.
I think we've already spent too much time talking about the Washington Wizards. Let's talk about two teams that are more relevant, two teams that actually matter. Of course, I'm talking about the Heat and the Hawks. Bob, you've disgusted me in years past. The last couple of years, you have disrespected the Miami Heat. And I'm going to give you the opportunity this episode to rectify those failures and those obvious just shots below the belt. You just didn't give them any of the due that they were actually due. Okay? You didn't give them any love. And I chastised you on the air. And I've been right. I was right when I verbally abused you for hating on the Heat.
No, you weren't. No,
yes, I was. Oh, I was. I definitely.
2 years ago, you definitely weren't right. They weren't that great. Last year, all right. Both years I picked them fifth, so I also need to control the narrative that you're painting here. Because you act like I said, oh man, they're gonna be like an 8 seed and get bounced.
That's what I heard.
Never said it. So they didn't go on some big playoff run 2 years ago. If you want to give me crap for last year, that's fair. I picked them fifth again, and they wound up actually being the 1 seed, which was a surprise to even you. You didn't have them number 1. You had them, I think, third. So not a huge difference between fifth and third. But yeah, they're a good team. I still just don't know if they're going to win a championship with this roster, but they'll contend in the East. I still like teams like the Sixers, Bucks, and Celtics a little more. But yeah, it's just there's too many guys that you have injury questions about. Jimmy Butler's going to miss 15 to 20 games every year. And part of that is they don't care about – they need to not care about going for the number 1 seed anymore. They need to just be healthy for the playoffs. Last year, they took it to the Game 7 against the Celtics. They had a great season. Yeah. I can't deny that, especially for last year. Yeah, Kyle Lowry's going to miss his 20 games. And like I said before, I don't love their bench. Like, they get the benefit of the doubt because of Coach Spoelstra and, but is Victor Oladipo and Max Strus, Duncan Robinson exciting you? I'm not scared of those guys. Oladipo's seen his best days pass him. Obviously, injuries have derailed his career. There's going to start Caleb Martin at power forward. That's gross. Even though he was a nice little gem last year for them. I love Bam. I think Bam could be a defensive player of the year this season, but I'm not picking them better than, say, 4th in the East.
So what happens when Tyler Hero, I can be your hero, baby. What happens when Tyler Hero comes out, drops like 22 a game, and they're like a top 3 seed again? Then what?
Great. They're going to not make the finals again.
Where's
Is Hero starting? Obviously, their bench looks better if he's coming off the bench, but it seems like they might be starting him this year.
It looks as of now, the projections show that he's probably starting. Because let's be honest, they have Victor Oladipo. What are you really expecting from him? I guess they could use another wing stopper type guy like Oladipo, but they got Jimmy. They got Bam. Like you said, Bam's a defensive player of the year candidate. Do they really need another guy who's mostly defense, some athleticism like Oladipo? Nah, man. They need a scorer. They someone who can make plays off the ball.
I'd feel better about them if they were able to keep PJ Tucker, not let him go to a team we're thinking is going to be better than them in the Sixers. So that didn't help. And then they could use a little more scoring punch.
Nah, and their bench is right. Gabe Vincent's done his thing. Max Strus has done his thing. Duncan Robinson is, just a 3-point shooter. That's really all you need him for because he's completely useless otherwise.
That's my point. I feel
Nikola Jovic has been making noise this preseason.
Well, that could be someone that, if someone like him steps up and is a big part of the rotation, that would help them a lot. But I just don't see. And also, if they do go deep, Jimmy Butler is probably not going to be the best player on the court. It's probably going to be Giannis or Embiid or like last year, Jason Tatum. So it's just going to be tough for them to get through that gauntlet. Maybe 3 or 4 years ago when the East wasn't so top heavy, you could sell me on the Heat a little more. Again, they got close last year, and I think Coach Spoelstra is a great head coach, so that helps them a lot. But do I see them being number 1 or number 2 seed again? No, and even if they are, I can't. I think a lot of the other teams got better. I think Sixers and Celtics both got better. Bucks are about status quo, but the Heat didn't really bring anybody in either. They didn't make any major splash or addition. Not that they needed a major splash, but they didn't get significantly better at all. They're about the same team they were last year.
They are, but that's not necessarily a bad thing when you're the number 1 seed, Bob.
No, not a bad thing. It's not like they won 60 games, though. They were like 53 or 54, which is good. Don't get me wrong. But no, fuck the Heat.
Nice. Real classy, Bob. Real nice. So you know what? Let's finish up with the Atlanta Hawks with the balding Trae Young.
Real nice.
What? It's not wrong what I said. It is a matter of fact. His hair is disastrous.
Fuck Trae Young. Bow, 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 bow.
Bob, of course, is referring to the viral Knicks fans video where I don't even remember where it's from, but They just recorded a bunch of fans on video talking smack about Trae Young and the Hawks.
Yeah, it was after they got eliminated in that postseason series, and just fans going nuts, hating Trae Young. They fanned the Flames though. I don't know why we were trying to fuck Trae Young before the series like even started. Like, so like they made him public enemy number one, and I'm not trying to give opposing players any extra motivation. And the Knicks fans, it's one of the most delusional fan bases in all of sports, really. As much as we are Knicks fans, we kind of look at it pretty objectively for the most part. And yeah, Knicks fans just went nuts in that video. They're saying, fuck Trae Young, he's balding, I'll shoot that dude.
They got reckless.
Go New York, go.
Yeah, it got reckless. Knicks fans are something special.
They're a special
fan. Yeah, considering Knicks fans, I can say such things. But his hair situation aside, as laughable as it is, this team is pretty damn good, man. They added Dejounte Murray over from San Antonio. Murray averaged career highs in points, rebounds, assists. One of the best defensive guards in the league. A true, legit two-way threat. And while it's a weird fit because he's also very much ball handling and ball dominant, just like Trae, it's a weird fit. But it sounds like it's one that's gonna be a good one for him, and it makes them right up there with the elite of the elite.
It's a great deal that fell in their laps, but let's pump the brakes. I'm not putting them up there with the elite at all. So I think they had to do it. I mean, no one even really knew Dejounte Murray was available, especially for like 50 cents on the dollar at best. They didn't really have to give up a whole lot to get him. So you definitely add talent when you can and see how you can make it work. Luckily, he is kind of an unselfish player, so I don't worry about him too much. And, they want Trae Young to play off the ball a little more because he is such a great scorer and a spot-up shooter. But he also can shoot off the dribble, so they can work them both in at the same time. They're probably both going to start, but obviously plenty of times, one's going to be on the court while the other takes a breather. They have other nice pieces on the roster. I've really liked DeAndre Hunter for a while, though. I don't know. He didn't look the same coming back from injury last year, but maybe with a full season and a full season coming up, he could really help them. John Collins is kind of a frustrating player. He's kind of like a good young player still, but he is what he is. Like, I don't see him growing his game much. He's not ever going to be great defensively. Clint Capella keeps getting nicked up year in, year out, but he is a defensive anchor. I mean, this is a solid team. I still put them in that same like 7 to 10 range with teams like now. They're definitely better than the Knicks and the Wizards, so those are the bottom end. But yeah, I put them in that range with say the Raptors, for instance, where they have some really nice, exciting pieces and good players, but I'm not buying them at all as a championship contender. I'll give the Heat the division for sure over the Hawks.
I mean, I'm leaning towards agreeing with you, but the more I look at their roster, the more I look at the overall composition of this team. I mean, I love the fact that they added AJ Griffin. I think he was a perfect fit for their roster the way it's currently constructed. Young, Murray, Hunter, Collins, Capella, that's a hell of a starting five. And I like John Collins a lot more than you do. And that much is clear to me at this point. We haven't really talked about John Collins that much. But if this guy can expand his game and be more of a perimeter threat, that'll only open it up even more for Murray and Trae Young. And Trae Young is a magician with the ball. He is a Steph Curry light. He's obviously not Steph Curry. He's not the shooter that Curry is. Not saying that at all. I'm just talking about the way they play the game, where their range, their ability to fill it up, and Trae Young's handling, his awareness off the pick and roll. Like, there's a lot to like about Trae Young. And if Collins can take that next step and expand his game, I know in the last preseason game he made 3 threes. So it shows that he's trying, that he's attempting to take that next step. They really need him to. I think he's a key piece for them this season because we know what to expect from Trae. We know what to expect from Murray. But they need that third guy. It seems like a common theme with a lot of these teams in the East that are going to be contending for that top spot. You're looking for that third guy. Who's that third guy? You know, Boston, we talked about Brown and Tatum. Who's going to step up as that next man up? Is it going to be Brogdon? Is it Smart? Who is it? You know, we talked about the Knicks. We've talked, but now here we go. We're talking about Atlanta. Who's going to be that third guy? It should be Collins. The man's got the talent to do it. He is a double guy, and he can make moves and he can make waves if he's logged in, if he's dialed in. But yeah, we definitely differ on our views on the Hawks. But before we move on from the Eastern Conference, we didn't say anything about the Bulls. And I'm sorry, Bulls fans. Chicago is a huge market. I don't know what I was thinking. I got too excited. But let's go back and talk about the Bulls real quick before we move on from the Eastern Conference.
I was fine with just totally dismissing them and hoping.
You know what?
I was this and just be like, "Where is the Bulls?" and just never see it.
I was too, but then I thought about it. I was like, no, it's not right. We should talk about the Bulls. The Bulls are a good team, man. I know Lonzo Ball's out for who knows how long, but they got Ayo, they got Alex Caruso, they got Levine, they got some good pieces, man. They got depth. They brought in Andre Drummond, they needed a defensive rebounder because Nikola Vucevic is absolutely useless on the defensive end.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of becoming the theme. I was just talking about the Hawks being in that range with the Knicks, the Wizards, and the Raptors. The other one that I was blanking on is the Bulls. So, again, Bulls and the Hawks definitely have better talent than those other teams, but they're still not elite contenders. They don't have that top 10 or 15 guy. Maybe argue with DeRozan on the fringe of the 15, but still, there's just too many flaws on this roster. We know they're not good enough defensively. Patrick Williams has not lived up to being the number 4 overall pick a few years ago. And then
best young trade piece in the NBA, baby.
Yeah. That's hilarious, to say the least. But listen, the Bulls will have a decent year. They're gonna be tough for some teams, but there's other times that, yeah, they're probably gonna get pushed around defensively. And again, they're just kind of in that middle of the pack in a top-heavy East.
I like their roster, though. You said a lot of legitimate things, Bob, but I really like their roster. They're legit, like 10 guys deep. And if you're not going to have one of those top 10 frontline guys, top 5 guys, you want to have a deep roster. You want to have options off the bench. And as if someone like a Patrick Williams takes that next step, because the potential is there. The physical abilities are clear. The length, the athleticism, the shooting when he shoots. I mean, it's all there. It's what you're looking for, especially in a player that you said he was taken 4th overall. So if a guy like that can step forward, DeMar's right. Zach LaVine can drop 50 on any night. Vucevic is a double-double guy. You had him on your fantasy team last year. You know what I'm talking about. And, I mean, Bulls fans, you can ask Greg, Bulls fans are very high on Ayo Dosunmu. I'm probably saying that name wrong.
Whatever, it's fine. I really like Ayo as well. Caruso's a good piece off the bench. Definitely plays great defense. He's a cookie monster. Gets those steals. But yeah, Lonzo Ball, being as hurt as he's been, is a real killer for them. I'd feel a lot better about their roster if they were going to have him for most of the season. And I like that we went from the Hawks to the Bulls because I look at 2 players on them. Instead of me saying Collins, Collins is really good. Don't get me wrong. I know he can score 20. I know he can get a double-double on any given night. I just think he is what he is now. I mean, yeah, he's still young enough where you can say, all right, he should improve on his game, but he's already been in the league like 6 years or so. I just don't think he's going to change much. I look at Patrick Williams kind of like how I look at DeAndre Hunter from Hawks. These are 3-and-D type players, top 5 picks in their respective drafts that haven't shown a lot. A big part of it really has been due to injury for each of them.
Yeah.
That's really kind of gotten their careers derailed. But yeah, if you get a full season out of those guys, maybe they are the 3-and-D type players that both those teams need to be, and then they wind up being better than we expect.
That's what I'm saying. That's what you're looking for. Now, before we move on from the Eastern Conference, I want to remind everyone to find the best place to bet for you. Betting.net offers expert and user reviews for every online sportsbook and casino in your state. So head on over to betting.net. I have a pootie cat at my feet. and she's going around my chair like a shark looking for love and squishes. But anyway, we'll go back to the Pootie Cat later. Let's go to the Western Conference, Bob. We're an hour and 15 minutes in, and we are just starting the Western Conference. Folks, if you're sticking with us, there's a bunch of people. We are all over on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter. We're all over. I think IG. I need to check if they have this posted on IG, but we're all over the place. So for those of you who are watching, thank you for sticking with us.
Well, hey, I mean, Chargers, Broncos, who cares? Broncos stink, and the Yankees haven't started because of the rain in the area. So you should be tuning in to us. We'll keep you busy until the Yankee game finally comes on.
That's what I'm saying. There's nothing else on TV. It's a Monday in October. What are you watching? You're watching us. You're watching Shoot the J. Shoot it!
Shoot it! But yeah, let's go to the West. Where are we starting?
Go to the West, man. Let's fucking do it, dude. You know what? I'm going to start with the least entertaining division that I think in the West. Let's start with the Northwest. All right. Jazz, Nuggets, T-Wolves, Blazers, and Thunder. Now, you look at this and you say, Dan, why are they the least interesting? Why are they the least entertaining? You've got 4 teams that could very well make the playoffs. You've got 2 of those, well, one of those teams is a legitimate Western Conference contender. One of them is an up-and-coming team that made one of the biggest moves in the whole offseason. And then you got one team that, they've got a legitimate top 10 superstar, but the rest of the team isn't quite right. It's not what you're really looking for. And then 2 of those teams are butt cheeks. Well, I say that because when you look at these other 2 divisions in the West, I mean the Pacific and the Southwest, a lot of those teams just have much better stories. You look at the Northwest, the Jazz are tanking, the Thunder are tanking. Neither one of these teams has anything worth talking about. Sure, the Thunder have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They have what's his name? Here we go. I'm blanking, Bob. Giddey, yes. They got Giddey. They got Lou Dort. They got some nice young players, but honestly, outside of Giddey and Gilgeous-Alexander, there's really nothing worth talking about on that roster. And Utah, ooh,
hey,
too yuck. Don't even get me going on Utah. You know what? Let's just start with Utah and get them out of the way and move on as quickly as we possibly can, okay?
Yes.
They traded everybody worth trading. They traded Donovan Mitchell. They traded Rudy Gobert to a division rival. Just if you're a Utah fan, I'm sorry that your team's butt cheeks. I'm sorry this is happening to you. It was just a couple of seasons ago that they were the number 1 seed in the West, and they were making all sorts of noise. Actually, they were number 1 seed this past year. They were 49-33. So it's not like this team has been middle of the pack and you don't know what you got, so you had to move on and rebuild. That wasn't the problem. You were the 1 seed. You figure you got a championship contender. Well, not so much anymore because they traded your top 2 players. Well, actually, you traded 3 of your top 4 players, including your top 2. And all that's left is Mike Conley and a bunch of guys you got back via trade.
Exactly.
Nobody's impressive. There's nothing going on. They're arguably one of the worst teams in the league. They're obviously tanking. They've added like a dozen first-round picks this offseason, but it does nothing for them this year. Same thing with Oklahoma.
Basically, the Timberwolves West or Mountain Wolves, whatever the hell you want to call them, because half their roster is made up of players that they acquired in the Gobert trade. When you look at Malik Beasley or Jared Vanderbilt, all these guys. So they're going to be a bad roster. We don't have to expound on it too much. I mean, their best player is either Jordan Clarkson or Colin Sexton, which is hideous. They're both good players, microwave type stores and get hot and instant. They're more 6 men than being the best player on your team for sure. Mike Conley's always hurt all the time. One guy I'd say look out for maybe is Walker Kessler down the line. He probably won't start to begin, but they drafted him, and he was a big factor factor defensively for North Carolina, and then he went to Auburn for 1 year. So keep an eye out for a player like that. But yeah, this team is tanking, and they're 100% going to be in the Victor Wembanyama's sweepstakes. Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's move on from those two bottom dwellers, bottom feeders. Let's talk about Portland real quick. All right. Damian Lillard's back. They've rebuilt a team. They've completely revamped the team around him. It's Lillard, Anthony Simmons, Nurkic, and pretty much the rest of the team is brand new. Again, one of those teams similar to the Knicks. They made moves. They did what they could, but it's not quite. They're not championship contenders. They're not bottom dwellers. They're in no man's land.
Yeah, another team in that purgatory, and I kind of get it. Like, even when we were talking last year and Greg was saying, oh, they need to trade Lillard, I definitely thought, yeah, at least entertain it because you could potentially get a big package, but he was hurt, so that didn't help. But also, it's Portland. Like, that's their only team, and that's a hard sell to trade your franchise icon like that. I mean, it was already probably bad enough. Probably fans were sad that they traded C.J. McCollum to the Pelicans and broke up that duo that had been together for so long, pretty much since the beginning of their careers. But that's just a hard sell for that type of fan base that's really rabid about their team, and they absolutely adore Damian Lillard, and for good reason. Damian Lillard's shown loyalty and re-signed, and he's got a massive contract extension. He's going to make $60 million. I don't know if it's this year, but definitely next year, which is just absolutely insane. But Lillard's headed into his age 32 year, and I know he wants to win, but this isn't a winning roster. I think they can still definitely contend for the playoffs. I do like them getting Jeremy Grant. I do think that will help that team and kind of fill the void that was left by C.J. McCollum leaving. And you saw some nice performances by some backups last year that got playing time because of their myriad of injuries. So a guy like Trendon Watford got valuable playing experience. Anthony Simons, till he got hurt, he looks like another microwave type scorer that can fill it up. I like Gary Payton coming over from the Blazers, so that's a nice defensive piece and a backup point guard to Lillard. So they improved, and more so than a team like the Knicks that's probably about in the same spot, like 9th or 10th in their conference. Maybe they'll be better than that, but yeah, just the Blazers aren't good enough to be what they were a few years ago when they were a top 4 or 5 seed.
And for the record, Dame is 32 this season, making 42.5 mil this year, going up to over 45 mil next year and almost 49 mil the following year, his age 34 season. So the man's getting paid, and I don't know if that's very conducive to his team being successful.
Yeah, what kind of extension do you get then? I remember them saying it was like 2 years, 120. So where's that $60 number, $60 million number coming in?
I'm not exactly sure, but I'm literally looking at the contract details right now. So, yeah.
Well, either way, he got paid, and I don't blame him. I mean, I still think he's going to play at a high level, but yes, anytime a guy over 30 gets an injury that limits him to, I think he played 29 games last year, I want to say. So he missed a huge chunk of time. But he hasn't dealt with a ton of injuries throughout his career, so I don't worry as much as some other players.
Now, let me see. Where are we? All right. So moving on from these just mediocre teams, let's talk about two teams that are actually relevant: the Nuggets and the T-Wolves. All right. So the T-Wolves made one of the biggest moves of this whole offseason. They traded for Rudy Gobert. They gave up, I mean, you know what? The better question is, what didn't they give up? Because they gave up a boatload of first-round picks. They gave up a truckload of players, which is fine because none of the players they gave up was anything relevant. No offense to any of those guys, but, Beasley, Pat Bev, Vanderbilt, they're not franchise changers or anything special. Nobody you're going to build around. So they gave up a bunch of guys, a bunch of first-round picks. They got Rudy Gobert. So now Rudy and Cat at the 4 and the 5, twin towers, which is great because Cat doesn't play any defense, and and Cat might be the best shooting big man in the NBA today. So if Rudy's going to be holding down the paint and clogging up the lanes, that's great because Cat can hang out outside the paint, focus on those pick and rolls, be that pick guy as opposed to the roll guy, and fade out for some deep twos, fade out for some threes, expand the court, and really add a different dimension to this Minnesota team that they didn't have before because they really needed him to hold on the paint. Now that he doesn't, like with Cleveland, Bob, now Minnesota, are they a legitimate squad? Is this a legitimate threat?
Definitely a legitimate threat, but still probably another year away. I fully expect Anthony Edwards to take the leap this year and seize control of probably being their best player. I know Cat is still going to be hard to supplant him. He's been there longer, and he still is a 25 a game. Probably not going to be double-doubling as much now that you have Gobert alongside him. But yeah, he's great shooting big. They have that trio that is going to excite everyone. They have other young, nice pieces around them, like a Jaden McDaniels who showed flashes last year. You even have D'Angelo Russell, who feels like he's been in the league forever, but he's still probably only like 26 or 27, I want to say, D'Angelo Russell. So they have a really great starting lineup. It's just, what are they going to get out of their coach, Chris Finch? Is he really a great head coach? They were 7th seed last year. They had a very entertaining series against the Memphis Grizzlies that a lot of people didn't see. I saw a couple of the games, but it was definitely one of those wild, fun series that you see in the first rounds of the NBA. But because it's Memphis and Minnesota, a lot of people didn't necessarily see it. And I'll never forget Patrick Beverley acting like they had just won the championship when they won that play-in game. But that's something that other people need to check out along with that Trae Young video.
Yes.
But Jalen Noel, Naz Reid, a couple of those young players that they have as backups. They have a good rotation, and they have three-star players, guys who are all-star caliber players. So Timberwolves definitely legit in terms of playoffs, but can I necessarily say they're a title contender? I don't think so. I think they're still a year away, but would it shock me if maybe they pull off some upsets? No, I think they can be there, and they'll be kind of like the Grizzlies were last year. I expect the Grizzlies to come back down a little because I don't see them being a number 2 seed again. Maybe it's the Timberwolves this year.
Maybe, but you know what? Let's talk about the best team in this division, the Denver Nuggets. Now, my relationship with the Nuggets has been well established off the air, and as far as I'm concerned, the Nuggets can suck it. I hate them. And it's mostly fantasy related because I had made it to the championship game in the Yiddy Fantasy League a couple of years ago, my first year in the league. I set the all-time wins record. I had Harden and Paul George when Paul George was a MVP candidate. I think he finished 3rd that year. But I had Harden and PG as my top 2 guys. I also happened to have Jamal Murray and Paul Millsap. And I went into Sunday, the final day of the championship series in that league. And I was down by just a few points and a couple of threes. Nothing special, nothing crazy. I didn't need anything extravagant. But let's just say, conservatively speaking, Paul Millsap and Jamal Murray shat the bed with me in it. And someone shit on the coats, and I was disgusted. And it ruined my season because I lost. And I didn't lose by a lot. I lost by a couple of points and I think like 1-3 or something like that. All I needed them to do was be average. Don't even go in. Just, do more than literally nothing. And there was no excuse for it. They ruined that season. I should have won that chip. I'm still disgusted, if you can't tell.
Yeah.
So ever since then, I've had a personal vendetta against the Nuggets. I have hated on them on the air, off the air. I have not given them any of their due, but it is time. Okay, it's time to give them their due. I can't hate anymore. I mean, I still hate them, but Joker is a top 2 or 3 player in the NBA right now. I think that's not questionable at this point. I don't care about championships. I don't care about none of that nonsense. The man is dominant. He does whatever he wants every game, and nobody can stop him. It's just that simple. But the rest of the team is fucking right, man. If Jamal Murray can come back and just be 80% of what he was before he got injured, stud. If Michael Porter Jr. can come back and stop with the back injuries and the nonsense and the nicks and here and there, the kid's got all the natural talent you'll look for. I remember a couple of years ago, people were like, oh, he could be a Kevin Durant type, the way how easy it is when he scores. And yes, offensively, I mean, there's very few wing players who can do the things that Michael Porter Jr. can do. But
he has a major back injury.
He's got a major back injury
last year, so that held him down, and things like that don't go away. So.
And I mean, the rest of the team is solid. Okay, they've got a good bench. They've got good role players. They added KCP. Solid squad. I think they're the best team in this division. I think outside of a couple of teams in the Pacific Division, I think they are one of the best teams in the West. Where they stand with you, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still probably going to have them in my top 4 or 5, and I do think they are the best team in this division. But yeah, when it comes to playoff time, I think the fact that they don't have a defensive anchor that I was talking about much earlier is going to hurt them. They brought in DeAndre Jordan to back up Nikola Jokic, which I think is a solid move. But we know DeAndre Jordan's seen better days, and he was pretty disappointing with the Nets last year. So he's seen his better days. Aaron Gordon, solid at this point. You know what you're going to get out of him. He's only their 4th option. Or maybe even 5th, really. You have Contavious Caldwell Pope, who's probably going to start a shooting guard. Bones Highland showed a lot toward the end of last year, filling in for Jamal Murray and coming off the bench. He's a guy that's in the running for the 6th Man of the Year award. So they have a good roster, pretty solid rotation. I don't know that it goes 10 deep. Probably goes 8 deep, especially once you're considering playoff time. Because guys like Jeff Green and DeAndre Jordan, you just can't really ask to give you more than, say, 20 minutes a game, especially in a long playoff series. So, again, I like this team more for the regular season. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if somehow we know the Suns and Warriors now, like, they know what they are. They're not going to kill themselves for the number 1 seed. I could see a team like Denver being like, all right, we got the MVP, back-to-back MVP. Let's try and get that number 1 seed, have home court advantage. But when it comes down to it in the playoffs, I just don't think they're going to have enough defensively to beat some of the better teams in the West.
I mean, that's why they added Caldwell Pope and guys like DeAndre Jordan and whatnot. They hope to shore up that defense. And you're right. If there's a hole on this team, it is that. And I can definitely see that. I can definitely agree with that. But, they're stacked, man. Otherwise, if these two guys stay healthy, Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray, if they stay healthy, you mentioned big threes when I was talking about the Nets. And this was one of those big threes that you mentioned. And you're not wrong. All right. The raw talent is there. Just the huge if of health is the factor with these guys. If those 2 guys are healthy with Joker, they might be the number 1 team in the West. Because like you said, some of these other teams, the Warriors, the Suns, the Lakers, etc., whoever, may not necessarily be gunning for that number 1 spot. They may not care. They just know if we make the dance, we don't need home court. Who gives a shit? We're going to
Warriors
horses.
Warriors won it all last year. They actually played the Nuggets in the first round. The Warriors were the 3 seed. I mean, it helped that the Suns disappointed and lost in the second round, so they didn't wind up having to play them in the conference finals. But yeah, the number 1 seed meant nothing for the Suns last year.
Speaking of the Suns, that's the direction that we're going to go in. But before I bring them up, head on over to betting.net now and see for yourself that betting.net makes it easy to find all of the legal online casinos and sports books in your state. Head on over to betting.net. And now we come down to our final 2 divisions, Bob, before we make our predictions. Let's try to speed this up a little bit more. I know we get wordy and excited. I do, but let's talk about the Pacific Division. Suns, Warriors, Clippers, Lakers, Kings. Honestly, all 5 of these teams should be competing for the playoffs. The Kings are probably at the bottom of that list, but they've got talent. They made some really quality additions this offseason. I love Sabonis. I love Fox. That 1-2 punch is beautiful. They added Keegan Murray in the draft, who was one of the top young prospects. I think he's injured to start the season or something. I know he's on the injury report. I don't know what's going on.
It was like a day-to-day, but they think he might be good to go for the regular season.
Yeah, something like that. But I see him on the injury report, so worth mentioning. But
yeah, so I just looked it up. He's just in a health and safety protocols. He might miss like the opener. He wants to get through some practices. So I doubt he'll play the first few games, but he's not far off.
So how are we going to tackle this here? Because the Golden State Warriors, like you said, they won the chip. They're loaded top to bottom. They're one of the best teams in the West, if not the best team in the West. The Phoenix Suns had the best record last year, and they bring pretty much everyone back. Looking at their roster, Paul, Booker, Bridges, Cam Johnson, who's finally healthy, DeAndre Ayton, like you mentioned earlier. They pretty much bring everyone back.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty much the same
on this roster.
I mean, the Suns are a great team. They're going to be a top seed assuming health, but I don't worry too much about that. I think Devin Booker is going to take yet another step and become a superstar. Chris Paul is still doing it. He's amazing. He's a double-double threat with his assists any given night. And then DeAndre Ayton, he was disgruntled in the offseason. Pacers gave him an offer sheet that the Suns wound up matching. They really had to do that. Unless they decided to trade for Miles Turner with the Pacers. But they wanted to hold on to Ayton. He's a younger piece. He's a better scorer. Not as great defensively, but he's okay. He's not that pillar or anchor that I've been talking about, but he's still solid. But yeah, they have a nice roster. I love Mikal Bridges. One of the few players that played all 82 games last year. Just that perfect 3-and-D guy, and he's young. It's not like he's a PJ Tucker type that you don't know when he's just going to fall off all of a sudden. So the Suns are still a very great top-heavy team. I worry a little bit about their rotation. I think this is a team that's going to need to maybe bolster that bench as the season goes on and add someone by the deadline. But they're still going to be one of the best teams without a doubt.
Let's talk about LA, Bob. Okay. Because you said something earlier that I didn't like, and I don't agree with at all. And it sounded like you were not very high on the LA Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
Can you touch on that for me? Because you didn't really explain it in our chat, and I didn't really delve into it because I got busy at work, but I saw it, and I disagree with it wholeheartedly. I disagree with it vehemently. Okay. Why are you low on the Clippers, and just how low are you right now?
So I'm not totally low on the Clippers. I still think they're definitely a playoff team, but we know one of the biggest things we talk about all the time is health. And Kawhi missed the entire season, which we expected last year after he tore his ACL before the playoffs 2 years ago. So we knew he'd be out the entire year. It looks like he's Quadzilla now, and he didn't miss leg day at all this offseason. So
your boy is sick.
You know Kawhi has been one of my favorite players for quite some time now. So this isn't anything against Kawhi. Paul George, easily a top 15 player when he's healthy. Paul George can fill it up. He's a great player. But both guys are on the wrong side of 30. And part of what I said also was looking at the team total wins.
You're on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah, we both are. Thanks. I mean, at least we're not like, Mike and Steve on the wrong side of like 50 or 60.
70. Old ass.
Damn.
Geriatric. Useless.
That's all right. You tell them that on Wednesday.
I will.
I gave him a little flack, but didn't go the extra mile. But anyway, what I was talking about is, so I like to look at the projected win total. So obviously, plenty of betting sites list the total wins that teams could have and what the number's set at.
Check out betting.net. Check out betting.net for those win totals.
Exactly. Nice little plug there. Nice little sponsor. And the Clippers are, I want to say like the third or fourth highest, maybe fifth. I don't know. I think they were set at 52 or 53.5. I'll pull it up so I can
Let's see.
So they have the fourth. Well, actually, they're tied for the second most. So the Celtics actually have, at least on this site. Sorry, it's not betting.net. It's some other site. But the Celtics are 53.5, and then you got the Bucks, Suns, and Clippers all tied at 52.5. That's what I don't like. I don't see the Clippers as potentially the second best team in the entire NBA. Are they going to be good? Yes. Can they get close to 50 wins? Yes. But with that many health questions, Kawhi coming off a torn ACL and being 33 or so is going to be load managed. You know it. Paul George, at some point, he's going to get load managed at the same time. Now they do have a good roster. Like they could arguably go 10 deep. You have pieces like Marcus Morris and Norman Powell around there, Vika Zubac.
One of the deepest rosters in the league, if not the deepest.
And so me, it's just more about that total is too high to me. I think it should be set more around like 47.5. It should be like 5 wins less, just because of all these injury questions that we know they're going to be load managed, and they should be load managed at this point. A few years ago, we were disgusted by it because we're like, Kawhi's still only like 26 or 27, and they're load managing him. And, you know, we're not even going to get into the fallout he had with Greg Popovich with the Spurs, which led to his trade to the Raptors. But yeah, these guys are on the wrong side of 30. It's an aging team. They're 3 best players. We want to add John Wall as their other best player. They're all on the wrong side of 30. They've all had a ton of injuries. I mean, John Wall has played maybe the equivalent of 2 seasons in the last 5 years. So I don't feel great about him.
That's not entirely his fault.
So, of course, it's not your fault. I'm not saying he was in bad shape or anything. But when you keep getting all these leg injuries and tissue injuries, yeah, you're injury prone. It's
the last year and a half, they sat him because they didn't want him, and he didn't want to get hurt.
Last year they did sit him, but that's also
the last year and a half, Bob.
He wanted to play all the time, and they're like, no, if you're going to play, you're probably going to play off the bench. You know, we're trying to tank, basically. So, yes, that's fair to say. Yeah, you can throw last year out the window, but still.
The last year and a half.
The fact is we still haven't seen him, and he does have an injury history. It's the same thing with Ben Simmons, but way worse, because at least Ben Simmons, even though we haven't seen him in over a year and he's had injuries, he's only 25 or 26. John Wall's already 30 or 31 and clearly had his best days behind him. He had a bunch of injuries in a row until, he gets traded to the Rockets. And then last year he doesn't play because of, philosophical differences and the fact that the front office wanted to tank. So, yes, that's fair. But, yeah, I just don't buy the Clippers as a top seed. If they're gonna have success and be a title contender, it's going to be because they're healthy when it comes playoff time. They're not going to be a high seed. I just don't see it.
The last time John Wall played, he was averaging over 20 points a game and 7 assists. If he does that,
2017,
2020. 2020.
Yeah, the bubble year.
That's the last. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? That was the last time he played relevant games and relevant numbers. Okay, he averaged 20 and 7. If he averages 20 points and 7 assists with this team, I mean, if Kawhi and Paul George are healthy, and I'm more worried about Kawhi than I am Paul George. The injury thing with Paul George, he had a fluky leg injury that screwed him over. But other than that, he's been pretty dependable for the most part in his career. It's not like John Wall.
But you got to look at the recent history. The last 2 or 3 years, he's barely gotten to 60 games, if that. And then John Wall, no, I think he's washed. I'm sorry. I don't buy John Wall as making a huge difference on them. They're still a playoff team. I'm not saying they suck, but I just don't buy them as a serious title contender because everything's predicated around if. And all 3 of their top players, it's an if statement. It's not like, you look at other teams that maybe have injury questions, but they have at least one guy that you can definitely rely on, whether that's a Tatum or a Giannis or a Joker. They don't have that. Kawhi's is good. Can be a top 10 player, don't get me wrong, but is he going to be healthy?
I would say the Clippers have 2 of the top 15 players in the NBA.
Yeah.
In Kawhi and Paul George.
They do.
They do.
Yeah.
So when you have 2 of the top 15, and Kawhi could arguably be top 7 if he's healthy and plays, 50 games or something, you're telling me this team, if they're healthy in the playoffs, you wouldn't be scared to play them in the first round if they're like a 5 seed or 6 seed or something? You wouldn't be scared to play them if these guys are healthy and coming at you?
But I don't expect them to be. It's kind of like the Nets. Yeah, like, the Nets have 2 of the top 15 players when they're healthy, but they're rarely always healthy at the same time. And we saw how Brooklyn was a disaster last year. Now, Brooklyn, I don't think is as deep as the Clippers. So if you want to sell me on one or the other, I actually kind of like the Clippers more. So that's fair to say. But yeah, everything's predicated on their health, and they've shown they're not healthy and they're older players now. It's not like they're in their 20s.
To give you an idea of where the Clippers stand in the eyes of the experts, at least when it comes to betting. They are the second team in the West behind the Warriors on damn near every major betting website when it comes to NBA Finals odds. So they are second behind the defending champions right now on several sportsbook websites.
I just told you, and what I'm telling you is whoop-de-fucking-do. They're not going to be healthy. They're not going to have all those guys come playoff time. It's not going to happen. And then you throw in the fact that it's the Clippers franchise. I mean, that they're arguably.
Bad luck.
I don't really buy into curses so much, but yeah, it's a snake-bitten type of franchise. So yeah, I love Kawhi and Paul George. If you can tell me, oh yeah, they're going to be healthy and play at least 70 games, and then mainly playoff time be at full health, sure. But I just don't see it happening.
I couldn't disagree more. And even if they're not fully healthy, they have one of the deepest, like I said, if not the deepest roster in the NBA. They are legitimately 10 men deep. And it's not just like, maybe it's 10 guys because they got a couple of young guys who need to step up or a couple of veterans who they're hoping to step into big roles or something like that. No. Outside of the starting five of Wall, George, Kawhi, Marcus Morris, and Zubac, they've got Covington, who's a legit wing defender, 3-and-D guy. Norman Powell, who can fill it up. Luke Kennard, who shot like 40% from three-point range. Terrence Mann, who's coming into his own. Reggie Jackson, who's a legitimate point guard. Maybe not, upper echelon guy, of course not, but he's a legit starting point guard. And he was a little over his head last year when he was playing too many minutes, but he's still a useful guy. So the depth, the talent, the coaching, that's a recipe for something special. And the fact that all these odds makers have them as high as they do, I think that's worth mentioning. But let's go to the other team in Los Angeles. Let's talk about the Lakers. We've waited long enough. This is one of the most polarizing franchises in the NBA, in all of sports. They've got LeBron. They've got AD. They've got Russ. Do they have anything else worth a damn?
Yeah, I don't like the Lakers at all.
I can't. The polar opposite of the Clippers. I hate this Lakers roster. I hate it.
Yeah, their depth is non-existent to me. I mean, Beverly and Westbrook, I mean, they've clearly seen better days. And yeah, this team it's rough. I mean, yeah, it's top heavy if they're healthy. But to me, whether it's the Clippers, the Lakers, whoever, like, give me the young legs. Like, give me the Grizzlies, the Pelicans, the Timberwolves, rosters like that. I'm sick of all these old-ass rosters. The Warriors are one of the few exceptions that have been able to do it, and even they have some really, really
They've got some really good young players.
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, we disagree about the Clippers, but, yeah, I'm in lockstep with you on the Lakers because I think LeBron's still amazing, and even though – yeah, we can definitely give him flack for maybe some, political views or talking out both sides of his mouth. I think people just need to realize, all right, yeah, LeBron can do some things that frustrate you or you hate seeing him miss games. But when he plays, I mean, he's so unbelievable. I mean, he's 37 now, going to be 38, I believe, in December. But just enjoy these last few years of LeBron because he's one of the best we've ever seen. He's the best player of our generation. I mean, we both grew up seeing some of Michael Jordan. But we've obviously seen way more of LeBron than we ever saw of Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
So that's what I really have to say about the Lakers. I don't think they're going to be a playoff contender, but I just feel like I have to say that because, I see LeBron get a lot of hate. And obviously he's clearly the most polarizing player. Maybe even his teammate actually more so Westbrook, but LeBron, it's lately it seems like either love-hate, but I think just try to enjoy how great of a basketball player he is and the fact that he's still definitely a top 10 player at 37, which is just ridiculous in the NBA.
I have yet to see LeBron in the NBA, and I would like to go to a Nets game or a Knicks game and see LeBron play this year. However,
I was lucky enough to see him a couple times. I saw him, I think he played the Nets back when and the Pacers out in Indiana. So luckily I have seen him. But yeah, I'd love to see. I've never seen the Lakers, so it's an iconic franchise, obviously. So seeing an iconic franchise and player would be awesome.
That being said, I want to see LeBron, but I have I've got a feeling that if when he comes to the Garden, when he comes to Barclays, I have a weird feeling that he's just not going to play in that game. And
that's the scary thing. You can't get tickets ahead of time for pretty much any NBA game. I mean, even some other guys, every team's so cautious, and part of it you do understand because all that really matters is the playoffs. They need to shorten the regular season really, so that these guys are more incentivized to play more games.
baseball needs to lower their regular season. Basketball needs to lower their regular season, but that's a conversation for a different show for a different day. Any team that has LeBron James, I don't care if LeBron's 40 years old. Any team that has LeBron and Anthony Davis should be amongst the league elite. You're talking about potentially two of the top 10 players in the NBA right now. And it doesn't matter that LeBron's old AF. It doesn't matter that Anthony Davis, his eyebrow could hurt and he might miss a month, okay? It doesn't matter. If these guys are on the court, they're two of the top 10 players in the NBA, both of them. And you were talking about the Clippers if. For me, the Lakers are a bigger if, because whereas the Clippers have a 10-man deep rotation where even if John Wall isn't quite right, they can get away with Reggie Jackson, Terrence Mann at the point guard, and Paul George and Luke Kennard at the two guard. They can get away with that. Even if Kawhi Leonard isn't quite right, you can get away with Norman Powell and Nicholas Batum. You know what I'm saying? Like, these guys aren't Kawhi. They aren't LeBron, obviously. But it's the NBA and it's real life. It's not fantasy. It's not 2K. Those guys are useful. They're legitimate pieces. So, whereas the Clippers, I think, are better built to deal with injury issues and whatnot, I think the Lakers are completely screwed. If LeBron misses time, if AD inevitably, as he always does, misses time, they're absolutely screwed. I like Pat Bev. I like Lonnie Walker. I like Thomas Bryant. But these guys, they ain't carrying the torch if one of these two superstars is down. And Russell Westbrook, let's be honest, they're going to try him off the bench to start the season, which is something they should have done from the very beginning. I don't know in what world they thought Russell Westbrook in the starting lineup with LeBron and AD or anyone was going to work, but they should have been trying him from the bench from the get-go. We talked about this last season.
Well, I get it because, look, he did play pretty well with the Wizards. I mean, the one thing I always give Russ Westbrook is that he plays every game. He plays his ass off. This guy ain't loafing. This guy isn't getting load managed. He's always playing hard, sometimes a little too hard, and he's a try hard, according to Greg, which is somewhat true because we do sometimes feel like he's just trying to fill the box score. Well, last year they didn't really have a point guard that you were going to really start over him.
They didn't.
That's part of the reason why they brought in Pat Beverly and they brought in Dennis Schroeder. Missed like 3 or 4 weeks now.
Injured, yep.
So, yeah, now they actually have guys that you could argue, all right, start them, give more of a defensive component to help and just distribute the ball to LeBron or AD. But, yeah, I mean, he's got to come off the bench. We said it was a bad fit at the time. I still was high on them last year because I thought they had the depth, but it was old depth. So, again, F those really old teams. And this team is worse than last year to me, and they missed it, and they didn't make the playoffs. So are they going to make the playoffs? If they do, it's going to mean not only LeBron staying healthy, which I think he will for the most part. Of course, he's going to get load managed a little bit just because of his age. But Anthony Davis, as usual, is the key. But he's made of glass, and I don't expect him to play more than, say, 60 games. So I think the Lakers are just in a tough spot, and I don't think a trade for, say, Turner and Hield is really going to save them. Does it maybe get them into the playoffs potentially? Maybe, but they're still not good enough to make any significant noise.
If you told me this Lakers team had a healthy LeBron, a healthy AD, along with Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, I'd probably put them in the top 3 in the West, top 4 in the West easily, because LeBron and AD deserve that sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The sort of Yeah. You know what? We'll go with that. I don't want to say respect. I wanted a better word, but yeah, they deserve that sort of respect. That if they're healthy and it's playoff time and it's go time, that when they're on the court, if you added two guys like that, are Miles Turner and Buddy Hield anything special? No, they're not franchise savers. They're not going to carry the Pacers to the playoffs or anything crazy. Absolutely not. But on a team like the Lakers, where Miles Turner can just focus on being a shot blocker and shooter from the wing on offense, and Buddy Hield can just spot up for threes when LeBron drives or AD is doing his thing in the paint, I mean, that's a win.
Yeah, we got to move on. But basically, with the Clippers and Lakers, I heard a lot of if statements and
a lot of ifs.
Clippers, whereas we weren't saying so much ifs with the Sixers, the Bucks, the Celtics, the Warriors, the Suns. So that's kind of my main point, particularly about the Clippers.
Okay, so let's move on to the final division, the Southwest Division. Grizzlies, Dallas Mavericks, New Orleans Pelicans, Spurs, and the Houston Rockets. We're going to touch on these teams, but before we do, want to remind you guys that betting.net finds the best promotions, offers, and bonus codes, so you don't have to. Head on over to their website now to take advantage of things like free bets and matching deposits over at betting.net. All right, Bob, final division. Let's wrap this shit up. Let's make our predictions. Let's bring it home. All right? Let's do it. The Rockets and the Spurs are tanking. There's really nothing to talk about there. I'm sorry, guys, who are fans of the Spurs or the Rockets. This was the wrong show to tune into. Listen, I love me Devin Vassell. I love Jakob Poeltl. I have that man on my fantasy team. I took him over Sengun from the Houston Rockets. The Rockets got Sengun. They've got Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, Jabari Smith, who they took in the draft, 3rd overall.
Kind of like what we were talking about with the East, with the Central Division. That's how I see these two teams in the Southwest. It's just the Spurs and the Rockets are both going to be bad, but the Rockets, I like their trajectory a little more, kind of like the Pistons, and they're going to be a fun team to watch. One of those league pass teams that can be very exciting and maybe pull off some upsets. I think Jalen Green will take a nice step, but yeah, both teams are just way too young and are too devoid of talent. They're definitely, especially the Spurs, 100% tanking.
So we had talked about like the Pistons and the Magic, the Pacers, the Jazz, the Thunder. We talked about all those teams being butt cheeks, absolutely useless, contending for the top 2 picks in the NBA draft for 2 franchise cornerstones. You could put the Spurs and the Rockets in that group as well. In fact, the Spurs are currently slated to, according to Vegas, be the worst team in the NBA. So if that's the case, Popovich would have both Tim Duncan and
Victor Wembanyama.
That's the one.
We're gonna have to get used to saying it. I feel good about Victor, not so much about the rest.
I didn't want to say it because I would have slaughtered his name. That's what I do. Ruben Drugans, right, Bob?
Yeah. We can't forget about Scoot Henderson, who's the other prospect that is.
Yes, Scoot Henderson. Yes. So the Spurs are currently slated to be the worst team in the league according to Vegas. So he would have had Duncan and Wembanyama.
Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know. I don't
know. We'll work on that for the next show. But he would have 2 generational big men while he's the head coach at San Antonio. Good for him. Not so good for their fans. Okay, not good for him, good for their franchise, not good for their fans. Same thing with the Rockets. They're butt cheeks, bunch of young guys, a bunch of weird pieces that don't really fit together. They'll figure it out, but they're going to be asked this year. Then we got the Mavericks, the Pelicans, and the Grizzlies. And it's weird because I think all 3 of these teams have legitimate playoff aspirations. I think all 3 are legitimate playoff teams and playoff contenders. But I have questions about all 3. And I think that's fair. Because when you look at each of these 3 rosters, they have a lot of question marks. You look at the Dallas Mavericks, for example. Beyond Luka Doncic, who is it? Who do you really trust out there? Do you really trust Tim Hardaway? Do you really trust JaVale McGee.
Christian Wood is the big addition that they added, and I like it. But
Do you
again,
trust
another injury-prone player.
Christian Wood is projected to come off the bench to start the season. JaVale McGee is projected to be
more
starter.
about. Yeah, but again, that's one of those things where, because they want a good second unit. Christian Wood is obviously better than JaVale McGee, but they know their defense is lackluster, so they got to put someone like JaVale McGee in the starting lineup.
Christian Wood is probably their second best player right now.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, you can definitely question it. I think it's fair to question it. But I mean, Jason Kidd, I don't think he's a great head coach, but I'll give them credit for where they went last year. I definitely did not think they were making the Western Conference Finals.
So having Luka Doncic, who outside of Giannis is probably everybody. If you didn't pick Giannis, you picked Luka Doncic to be the franchise cornerstone if you're starting a franchise right now. We were talking about Julius Randle being a number 3 on a championship contender. Conservatively speaking, Christian Wood is probably your number 4 or 5 on a championship contender, and he's their second best player. Say whatever you want about wanting defense for the starting unit, wanting whatever around your star player. This roster is pretty disappointing, okay? But that being said, Luka Doncic is so damn good. Does it really matter that their roster's lacking elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean, you could make the argument that, hey, they actually got a little bit better by adding someone like Christian Wood, albeit not significantly.
Sure.
And they did win 52 games last year and were a 4 seed that made the Western Conference Finals. Now, obviously, to say Doncic is clearly the biggest reason for that, and everyone was shocked when they upset the Suns in the second round. Spencer Dinwiddie played pretty well for them once he came over. But I mean, they have a lot of guys that are more like a third or fourth option, like Dinwiddie, like Christian Wood. So, they got nice contributions from defensive guys like Reggie Bullock and Dorian Finney-Smith. Maxi Kleber, the limited minutes he plays is decent defensively, at least down in the post. But, there's clearly something missing. This team can't win a championship as currently constructed, but they're always dangerous just because they have one of the top 5 players in the NBA.
And then we talk about the other 2 franchises. Okay, the Memphis Grizzlies, who actually won this division last year, and the New Orleans Pelicans, who finished 36-46. They made the play-in, but that was pretty much the extent of it. Now, both of these teams have young talent, and they're led by a generational franchise cornerstone. Memphis led by John Morant. New Orleans led by the early oft-injured Zion Williamson. Sorry, I had a burp there that didn't want to come out. But no. So we got 2 teams, 2 generational talents, 2 franchise stud cornerstones. We're not talking about maybes. We're not talking about potential. We're not talking about what we want to see or whatever. We're talking about actual legitimate superstars. And they've got both of these teams have plenty of talent around them. Which one of these teams do you trust more, Bob?
I definitely trust the Pelicans more. They're both going to be good. So I trust the Pelicans more because I just really think a guy like Brandon Ingram can take that next step. They have an established score that you know what you're going to get out of CJ McCollum. Clearly Zion's health is a question mark. He's still so young, and he looks like he's in phenomenal shape now. Valanciunas is a walking double-double. And I also think coaching, something that we don't talk a lot in the NBA, and you were definitely right at the beginning that you needed like the superstar players. It doesn't matter quite as much as a lot of the other sports, particularly football. But listen, I think Willie Green is a young up-and-coming coach that's going to help this team a lot. He got them into the playoffs last year. A lot of that had to do with them making that trade for McCollum, but they didn't give up. Even though they were looking on the outside, looking in, they won the play-in. They made it as the 8th seed. They fought the Suns hard, and getting Zion back is huge. No doubt about it. He was number 1 overall pick in 2019 for a reason. You get damn near a full season out of them. I think this team is extremely dangerous, and I like their bench pieces too. Herbert Jones is probably going to start, probably a shooting guard. With McCollum being a point guard. But yeah, he's a great defensive piece. Was already rookie year, he was phenomenal defensively. So you need a player like that can play defense. Maybe he expands on his game and becomes maybe a 3-and-D player. Jackson Hayes is a good young player that can add something defensively and can run the court. True rim runner, backup type center with a lot of energy. So I just like this team. I like the fresh legs of this team. So I think this team is kind of like the Grizzlies were last year. That's going to excel. Now, it's not as under the radar as the Grizzlies were last year. Really, no one expected them to be a 2 seed. Whereas if I said to someone, "Oh, could you see the Pelicans as a 2 or 3 seed this year?" They'd probably say, "Yeah, I can see it. They have a really good squad, really good starting lineup." So I trust them just slightly more than the Timberwolves. Or sorry, not the Timberwolves. than the Mavs.
Memphis,
yeah. Grizzlies. I think Grizzlies are coming down though. Not a lot, but Jaren Jackson being out like 2 months potentially. And then it's just nowhere to go but down. They won 56 games last year. They're gonna win 56 again? Doubt it.
I'm gonna go with the Memphis Grizzlies because of Ja Morant. And I know injuries are a question with both Zion and Ja, but Ja's got less questions, whereas Zion has issues with his lower half. He's got questions about his weight. Can his frame handle the muscle that he's putting on? Like, these are all legitimate questions. And let's be honest, he looks great now, but he packed on a lot of weight in the offseason and when he was injured. So that's something to be monitored and keep an eye on. Whereas for Memphis, they don't really have any questions. I really don't. Ja Morant's an elite point guard. Desmond Bane is a solid 2. Dylan Brooks is a great wing player who can play great defense and step to play offensively when needed. I love Jaren Jackson as a stash in fantasy, but when that man comes back, he's legit. JJJ is a shooter, defender, rebounding, a little bit of everything. Steven Adams is useful in his role. And then bench-wise, they've got a solid little bench. I like Xavier Tillman off the bench. I like Santi Aldama, who's currently slated to start in place of JJJ. Brandon Clark, Zaire Williams, Danny Green when he comes back healthy. So this team is right. They won a division last year. They won 56 games, like you said. I don't know if they're winning 56 games again. That is something questionable, but it's not like anyone in this division is overwhelmingly good or stacked with young, great talent or something. It's the Pelicans, the Grizzlies, Dallas led by Luka and nobody else. I'm not impressed. I'm not impressed by this division at all. And I like New Orleans. Their starting 5 is right. I like Devontae Graham and Jose Alvarado off the bench. I like Larry Nance off the bench. They've got some solid young pieces, but I don't know. I like Memphis over New Orleans. Now, that all being said, Bob, now's the time. It's time to make predictions. Yep. We're done with the beef. It's time to eat. All right? Let's make these predictions. 1 through 10. Give me your Eastern Conference 1 through 10.
Oof. All right, here we go. So, number 1. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right, so number 1, I got the 76ers. I think they'll have a great season and love their overall depth and 2 of the best players, Embiid and Harden. I'll go number 2, the Bucks. 3, the Celtics. I'm going to put the Heat 4. I'm going to go with the Cavaliers 5. Put the Nets 6. I'm going to go with the Raptors 7.
Wow.
Bulls 8.
Wow.
Hawks 9. And I'm going to put the New York Knicks number 10. I'm only doing 10. We don't need to talk about the teams outside of the playoffs.
Nobody cares about those teams outside of those 10. No one gives a damn. I'm sorry, Orlando, etc. Y'all are out. You're fucking out. These guys are in. Okay? All right, so Philly, Milwaukee, Boston, Miami, Cleveland, Brooklyn, Toronto, Chicago, Atlanta, and the Knicks. Yeah?
Yeah. That's my 10.
All right. I'm going to go Milwaukee 1. And you know what? I'm doing this live. Okay. We
Do
did
it
all
live.
this. We're doing it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. This thing sucks. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. Who was that, Bob?
Oh man, Bill O'Reilly. I had a
Bill O'Reilly. I'm channeling my inner Bill. All right. So I'm going to go Milwaukee 1. I'm going to go Philly 2. I'm going to go Miami 3. Boston 4. Brooklyn 5. I'm gonna go Atlanta 6. Cleveland 7. Chicago 8. Chicago just feels like a good 8 seed. I don't know what it is.
And we both put them 8.
We did. I'm gonna go.
We're the Cavs. You love the Cavs, and you got them 9 or 10.
No. I said Cleveland 7.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you have all 6. Yeah, sorry.
Jabroni. Yes. All right. So Milwaukee, Philly, Miami, Boston, Brooklyn, Atlanta, Cleveland 7, Chicago 8, Toronto 9.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was thinking of.
And it's either between the Knicks or the Wizards for me.
I don't even feel good about the Knicks being 10. I guess that's slight bias. I mean, we stink. It probably would have been the Hornets if they had Bridges and Ball for the entire year, but they don't. So
they don't got Bridges, and Bridges is in legal trouble. It's over with that man's career. I'm going to go with the Knicks, but the Washington Wizards are right there for me. All right. And since you started out the East, I'll start out the West.
Nice. That's fair. Here we go. This is harder, I think. I had a harder time picking my West, honestly. Seeding, I could see us being way off, but I think we'll get most of the teams. It's just the order could be nuts, honestly, with the West.
I'm going to go Phoenix 1. I don't want to do it, but I did it. I hate the West. I hate the West so much.
Tough, man. It's really tough.
It's so many good teams, and there's so many teams with special like asterisks, like the Warriors and the Clippers resting guys and the Lakers resting guys. Like, all right. You know what? I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go Phoenix 1. I'm going to go Denver 2. I'm going to go Golden State 3 again. Am I going to do it? I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to go with the Clippers 4. Ooh, I know Bob already is disgusted with that. I'm going to go
top 3. I can actually live with them being 4.
I'm going to go Minnesota 5, Dallas 6. This is stressful. My heart is racing right now. I'm going to go with.
Is all your research paying off? Do you think it'll pay off? It's going to be
nope,
money?
Not at all. I'm going New Orleans. I'm going to go LA Lakers.
Wait. So 7 was the Pelicans, or did I miss one?
7 Pelicans, 8 Lakers, 9 Portland. No. I'm sorry. Hold on. I screwed up. I'm going to go 8 Memphis, 9 Lakers, 10 Portland.
Okay. All right.
I hate it. I hate it already.
All right. Yeah. No, I don't love mine. I actually changed some. No, my top 4 is actually staying the same as I had before. Actually, maybe even the top 5. So I'm going to put the Warriors number 1. Now, obviously, I did talk about how they don't need to go for the number 1 seed, and they're not worried about that.
That's why I dropped them down a little bit.
But at the same time, I think they're potentially even better than last year, even with an extra year on the tires of Thompson, Curry, and Draymond. I'm just giving about a minute to them just because we didn't talk too much about them because everyone knows how freaking good they are. They won another championship.
Yeah.
That trio has 4 rings. But Jordan Poole just got paid. I expect him to have a big year, potentially be 6th man of the year. Wiggins showed us a lot last year. He really worked on his game, became a defensive stopper. And then, they got a bunch of draft picks in the past few years. So Wiseman might finally be healthy. Von Looney is a solid starting center. Kuminga, I really liked him and the action he got last year. He didn't play much in the playoffs, but he's going to be more involved. And even Dante DiVincenzo, kind of forgotten guy, and used to be on the Bucks, and he got traded to the Kings. Now he's with the Warriors. I think they'll bring the best out in him. So I'm picking the Warriors number 1. I think they're going to have a great season.
Okay.
Number 2, I'm going to go with the Suns. 3, I'm going with the Nuggets. 4, I'm going with the Pelicans. I wasn't just blowing smoke up your ass when I was talking about them as a top 4 seed. So I'm picking the Pelicans 4. I love them. I'm going to go with the Timberwolves 5. Actually the same as you. So we're both high on the T-Wolves.
Mm-hmm.
Then this is where it really got ugly for me too. And I've been crossing things out and totally on the side on some of these, to be totally honest with you. Jeez.
Here we go, Bob.
I'm going to go with the Grizzlies, number 6.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the Clippers, number 7. I'm going to put the Mavericks 8. I actually flipped them. I had the Mavericks 6.
Okay.
But yeah, I think those teams will all be bunched around the same amount of wins. So I think being the 8 seed won't look horrible for the Mavs. And then 9, I'm going to have the Blazers. And 10, I'm going to have the Lakers.
All right. Let's wrap this up. Award winners. All right. We're going to run it down real damn quick. MVP.
I'm going Luka. I've been picking him the last 2 years. I'm going to be pissed if I don't pick him and then all of a sudden he wins it. Maybe I shouldn't because then he probably will. But I'm going to go with Luka Doncic. I think he's due and continue the streak of international stars winning the MVP.
I'm going to go back to Greek because that man's going to, if he's healthy, he's playing 75 games. He's going to dominate, and they're going to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the East. I'm going to go Giannis. Rookie of the year.
Rookie of the year, I love Jaden Ivey. I'm going to go with him from the Pistons.
Ivy?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All
See,
right.
the only thing I want to add about that too, and certainly Ben Carroll, these other guys could win the Rookie of the Year, but generally a guard or a wing player wins it. I mean, we haven't seen a big man win it since Cat in 2015, I believe. So it's generally a guard or a wing player. So that's why I like Ivy.
I'm going to go Keegan Murray. Sacramento is my rookie. Coach of the year.
Coach of the year. Well, I'm going to go with Willie Green from the New Orleans Pelicans. I picked them as a 4 seed. They had 36 wins last year. They clearly got to have a lot more than that if they're going to be a 4 seed in the West.
I'm going to go with Ty Lue.
Okay. Flips.
Yep. I mean, if they're going to be a top 4 seed, I mean, Ty Lue is one of the best coaches in the NBA, period. And I don't think he gets enough love, especially for his in-game adjustments. 6th man of the year.
I'm going to go with the obvious one like I did last year with Tyler Hero. And I think we all got it right. I'm going to go with Jordan Poole.
Boy.
Warriors.
Huh?
Jordan Poole. My 6th man.
I don't like it. I don't like it. You know what? I'm going to go Hero again. That's my boy. Even though I don't know if wait, is he
even though he's probably starting.
Even he's probably starting. God damn it.
They could change it. Who knows?
You know what? God damn it. It's Poole.
Christian Wood. Bones Highland. Give me some options.
You know what? I'm going to go Norman Powell. Fuck it.
Nice. I like that. I like Powell.
I'm going to go Norman Powell.
A little outside the box, but definitely a contender.
Defensive player of the year.
Defensive player of the year. I'll say Giannis wins it this year. I mean, it's usually been Gobert's award, although Marcus Smart won it last year.
Wait, who'd you say?
I'm going to go Giannis. Freak. He wins it this year.
NBA. Oh, wait, I need to give mine.
Yeah.
Okay, NBA champion. Oh my God. I'm gonna go Evan Mobley. I'm doing it.
For what?
Screw it. Defensive Player of the Year.
Oh, okay. I hope so. That'd be nice.
Finals matchup.
So before that, Most Improved Player. That's one of the other awards.
That okay, yeah, Most Improved.
You want me to go first?
Yes.
Yeah, this is tough, honestly, but I'll go with another typical one. I'm going to go with Anthony Edwards from the Grizzlies.
Okay, Edwards.
So him and Poole are kind of pretty much favorites at the awards, but
I'm gonna go Halliburton.
Hallie, all right.
I think this is where he really steps up for fantasy owners. Jot that down. All right. Finals championship, Bob. What's it going to be?
So I'm going to go with the chalk according to my predictions. I think the 76ers make it. I think Philadelphia is having a great year for themselves. Outside of the Flyers, of course, because they stink in the NHL. The Eagles are 6-0. Sixers have a special team. I think Philly makes it. However, I think they lose. Whoever comes out of the West. I think it'll be the Warriors or Suns, but I still
come on, Bob.
Lean toward the experience. I'm going to go with the Warriors.
So Golden State wins back-to-backs.
Yep. Boring, but got to do it.
Over
the Sixers. So Warriors beat the Sixers in the finals.
I'm going to go with Milwaukee. Milwaukee over Phoenix.
Nice. So a rematch of a couple of years ago.
Yep. And Milwaukee does it again. Finals MVP?
Curry.
Giannis.
Yeah. We know where those are going to be. Yeah, you want to be cute, maybe I'd take, Wiggins or something, but nah, can't do it.
All right, so there it is. Bob, any final thoughts?
Real quick one. Who gets the number one pick? So this means not necessarily the worst team because we know how the lottery goes. So who do you think is the lucky team that gets Wembanyama?
San Antonio.
Okay, you do think it'll be the Spurs.
Yep.
Yeah, I feel like I could go somewhere different just because.
Come on, Bob. Should be this long.
I'll go with the Thunder.
Thunder. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Here we go. So that's it. We made our predictions. We talked about the NBA, all the teams, relevant players, predictions, playoffs, championship, draft, all of it. I just want to remind you guys that betting.net is not just sports betting. Here we go. If this works. There we go. Betting.net compares the best online casinos. So sit back, relax, and play the top online slots, poker, and table games over at betting.net. For Bobby Hunt, I'm Dan Kornhauser. Thank you guys for tuning in to another edition of Shoot the J. Shoot it! Woo!
Great show. Long show.
Hell yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Instagram. We are at Dan and Bob Talking Sports, DB Talking Sports. I'm Dan Kornhauser for Bobby Hunt. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time.